Oh God, guys, I've got bad news. So, I'm not entirely sure what happened. I did my earlier stream where I talked to Joshua Collins, and now I'm here, and in between those 2 points in time, I relaxed a little, and I don't know. I think I fell victim to an attack by an enemy stand because I am so fucking tired. I am so goddamn tired right now. Holy shit. I've been getting like, ugh, I've been getting like 4 or 5 hours of sleep every night because, God, it used to be fine because my cat would wake up at like 9 a.m. for food, but now lately Artemy has been waking up at like 6:30 or 7 and stuff, and I've been waking up every, I don't know, it just hit me. I was fine earlier, but oh boy. All right, if I come off a little sleepy boy, all right, it's not my fault, okay? This is what I get. This is what I get for deigning to nap with my girlfriend in between the first stream and the second stream, okay? When I'm laying there, when I'm spooning my big squishy GF and rubbing my face against her large milky boobies, her large milkers, when my whole body is being engulfed by her big booby, it is so sleep inducing, so comfy. The 5G is making me tired. Yeah. All right. Milky time is over. We're done. No more milk. Okay. No more milk. Oh, oh boy. Okay. All right. Discord call. Discord call. Milkers. Xander Hall. Milkers. Discord call. Discord call. Discord call. Discord call.
That's exactly right. I don't know where.
Hello.
Hello,
Hey,
hello.
how's it going?
I'm very sleepy. Something
Yeah.
that would no doubt be fixed under Bernie's Medicare for All. Let's talk about it.
Well,
We'll just
that's
give
a start.
give me a second. How are we though? How has it been? We'll have a little bit of small talk since you've got your stream going. And our end is a bit less going.
Oh yeah, no. Oh yeah. You guys are live right now. No N words. Got to be careful. God, I wish I was back on Twitch. Wouldn't that make this so much easier?
Yeah, have you ever talked with them about getting unbanned or?
Yeah, I've sent 3 unban
There I
requests.
am.
Each of them with a full, heartfelt, essay on how I've learned my lesson and never again will I critique the state of Israel. But
Well, I mean, I don't think it was quite that, from what I know.
no, it was a
but
little different.
I am surprised though that that's like a lifetime ban, given the quality of, I don't mean to be too rude here, but given some of the quality of extremist discourse on Twitch, that and that's. I don't know,
No,
man. That seems par
well,
for the
I
course.
agree. That's the thing. See, I understand. Twitch sometimes bans for dumb reasons. I think everyone can agree on that. But what's frustrating to me is my God, everything I do is like progressive rhetoric. You'd think that like eventually they'd look and go like, okay, maybe he had a bad day or something. He's probably not going to come on here and start advocating for the JQ if he gets back on Twitch. But apparently, I don't know. I don't know if they think I'm a Nazi or something.
Well, here's to hoping, because I don't know. I watch your streams. I'd say I watch your streams more than I watch most lefties on Twitch, and
I'm flattered.
I usually enjoy them. I watched I haven't caught a whole one in a while, but I watched some of you with Stefan Molyneux, of course.
Yeah.
And I listened to some of that with Adam Kokesh, the libertarian fellow.
Yes.
And then the speech. It wasn't a speech. It was like a discussion with your chat about Biden and Bernie and
right. So that's the bridge that I'm building. Not being Bernie or bust makes me look so much more reasonable to the center leaning types. It's all
question.
It's all an optics.
Do you have
game.
do you have a stream call camera by chance?
Do I have what?
Camera for Discord.
I can. Okay, this might break my setup. I'm gonna give it a shot though. I'm feeling brave. Okay, I'm gonna try and.
Alrighty.
Okay, I'm gonna try and because I have two. I have one camera with two outputs. So I'm
That's
gonna
sick.
see if it gives the right output out, then everything is fine, and it gives the wrong output out, then
All right.
it's bad.
All
Okay.
right. Thanks for giving it a go.
Here we go. Let's see if this works. I'm probably gonna look a little bit worse than usual. There. Do I look fine?
There we go. That looks wonderful.
Sick. Okay. Cool.
There we go. Yeah. All right. So basically on our end, so we've got like a on my channel, a little mini live stream thing. There's going to be like a minute intro video, and then we'll go hop straight into like conversation, etc.
Of course. Here, let me
Yeah,
post the
bro.
link to your thing in my chat, guys. Ryan Osiris, Red Suit Media, done a lot of really cool stuff. Okay, here, go fucking YouTube video.
Hell
Why
yes.
are you watching through me?
Yeah.
Go watch through them. Go. There's the link.
Ryan is professional. He's legit, man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Hopefully. So yeah. So I think I was just talking with Bastiat before. Like Bastiat was saying that he wants to start with just like a basic conversation, just to start in, just get the flow of things. But I thought it'd be interesting as well, getting into different topics in regards to like automation, political violence, and coronavirus. That was one of the things you said.
Oh, I'd be
Bastiat.
delighted. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was a sort of general flow of things I thought would be good.
So how are you holding up with this corona apocalypse?
Doesn't really affect me. I was always pretty introverted, and I make all my money inside anyway. So the main thing that sucks actually is that all the chicken is gone. I'm not trying to like make the vegans my audience free. I can get rice, beans, soup, but I cannot for the life of me just find some nice simple chicken breasts, which is a shame because I've been trying to lose weight. Chicken's just a great food for that.
It is.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Actually, chicken and toilet paper are the only things that I've persistently had trouble finding. I don't know what it is, but apparently everybody comes in 6 a.m. senior hours to buy it all up.
Have you invested in the bidet market yet?
Oh man, I've been thinking about it, but
It's going
I've just
up.
been
It's
working a
got
lot
to
lately.
the moon. To the moon.
No,
Let me
seriously, it absolutely it's kind of funny. I've had many friends trying to sell us on this. I mean, I'm sold. I just you just gotta get around to buying one.
tell you. Yeah, there's going to be some sick investment opportunities like the day before the economy opens back up. We're going to have to decide what's really going to boom. And I think that after the toilet paper shortage, people are going to say, you know what? No, fuck it. Enough is enough. It's bidets all across the states, West Coast to East Coast.
It's kind of strange that they haven't caught on. I mean, I guess it's a weird thing to start with, but it is kind of weird they haven't caught on. That's one of those uniquely American things that doesn't make sense as
we
to why it's
suck.
uniquely American. It's like I guess it's like that and the metric system and a few other things. Fahrenheit versus Celsius. I mean,
Yeah, because well, metric system is just better.
well, it is better, but it's real hard to abandon those big, strong miles for those wimpy kilometers. You know what I mean?
True. That's
hard
so
to- it's hard
goddamn
to-
true. What even is a
fair, though,
kilometer?
I'm surprised. To be fair, I'm surprised that Americans haven't done it because they're a lot simpler for
Well,
your mind.
Just to be clear, we did have a president that was really working on metrification. The only problem is that president was Richard Nixon, so it didn't work out. It didn't,
true.
The way
Other
I
things got
read
in the
it,
way.
he actually gave it like a good faith shot, but some analysts came back to it with an estimate that the amount of money it would cost to replace every single road sign in America, this would be like an apocalyptic expenditure to fix all the infrastructure that
No,
we use.
what you do is you just drop down to like kilometers. So it'd be instead of 60 miles, it'd be 60 Ks. So that's how you just do it.
Well, yeah, but then it's not 1-to-1.
That's not accurate.
I know, but who cares?
There are a
Right?
few.
The thing is about being right.
Just
rather
spray
than-
paint a K in front of all the whatever. They'll sort it out.
There are a few hangovers though. I went through driving through Tennessee as I like driving a lot, and there are like random signs where you'll see miles and then parentheses kilometers and things like that. There are places they're trying to do, but I don't know what it'll take at this point.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, in that case, do we want to start? Do we want to start
Yeah.
this thing?
Yeah.
Let's get the introduction going. Alrighty. So 1 minute video, and then we'll get straight into it.
All right.
And welcome everybody to Red Suit Disputes, as we are joined by two of the greatest political advocates on the internet right now, with Vosh and Bastiat today, having a great discussion about all things social neoliberalism and world. So how are we, gentlemen, tonight? Are we dandy? Are we fun? We groovy?
Yeah. No, that was a good intro.
That was a great intro. I really enjoyed
Seriously.
watching that. Anyone who was just watching my stream and not that really missed out. I'm feeling great. Tired though.
Yes.
Oh, man.
So, starting off, is there anything we want to dive into initially,
Well,
dude?
I'll introduce myself, since I may be new to a lot of the folks watching on Voss's channel. My name is Bastiat. I stream on Twitch, and I chose my name after the French economist from the 19th century. I am well, as a fossil fuel attorney, works in corporate law. I think I probably fit the neoliberal shill definition as far as can be. So, on our stream, we talk about law and politics from that kind of perspective, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. And I guess for those who don't know, Vosh, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm an anarchist YouTuber. I guess people generally associate me with the dirtbag left, and I like advocating for progressive socialist policies.
I just realized that I was muted. So welcome everybody to that. Vosh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a progressive socialist YouTuber and an anarchist. I like advocating for policies that I think will make the world as good it could possibly be. And I usually identify with the dirtbag left, which I guess to some people means that I'm like a Nazbol, but I like to think means that a contentious and aggressive style of rhetorical, delivery is effective at changing people's minds.
Yes, and Bastiat, since we were muted before, would you like to also introduce yourself?
Sure. Neoliberal fossil fuel attorney. I think I fit the definition pretty well. It's a whole lot of fun. Be sure to check out our stream, twitch.tv/BASTIAT.
Wonderful. So today, is there anything we want to jump into? Is there anything that we want to specifically get to as we start a wonderful conversation?
Actually, I do have a question for you, Vosh. And I know you tend to do this. I think when you're speaking to new people, you will ask them to define, I guess to kind of define their politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard you describe yourself as a few things before. I've heard you. I think in the discussion with Adam Kokesh, I think you described yourself as a libertarian socialist. I'm pretty sure I've heard you say, called yourself a communist before. And then today, an anarchist. So what would you like? I'm guessing this is all different words to get to the same idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlapping Venn diagrams that are associated with like leftist thought, and I usually adopt the one that I think is going to be most prudent in that definition, or I'm sorry, in that discussion. For example, like leftist is very broad, just means, at least to me, anti-capitalist. Libertarian socialist would just be any anti-authority, like anti-capitalist. But with regards to like anarchists, like speak more broadly towards like the elimination of the state. I bounce around a lot. I try not to. I generally like going for the vaguest possible term because I've found that people's understanding of the word anarchist and communist is very, very individualistic and very, very presuppositional, and I like using like a term like, for example, libertarian socialist is so all-encompassing that it's very difficult to attack with strawmen.
Yeah, I guess the reason I'm curious is I think it makes sense to me to use all of that when discussing your end state, like where you want to get with, your ideal society, which is, from what I understand, free of, if not all hierarchies, well, I guess basically all hierarchies, all compulsion, everything is voluntary. There's no more state. Right?
Yeah, I mean, ideally,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
There are some
that's-
just
I think-
hierarchies, but I think that would be like a good goal to reach out towards.
Yeah. And so I figured what you meant by that, anarchist, communist, all of that, libertarian, socialist is ultimately you're talking about the final goal. And then as Marx described communism, that's the final goal, the stateless, propertyless, classless society. So that's your goal, right?
Yeah, as it's usually described, I found anarchist is more of a political philosophy and communism is more of an actual state of governance. So I think it's possible for one to be both, but I would agree, yeah, like ultimately my end goal would absolutely be a communist society.
Well, I mean, so that's interesting because I've normally, one of the things that's kind of astounded me on Twitch is that whenever I talk to somebody who describes themselves as a communist, they always start with the word anarcho, and they don't. It's like it is not a state of government, like so. I'm trying to get, I guess, a handle on.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
I think
because I would have thought like when I use the word, I am trying to basically refer to, what actually existed in some form, the same way I would with like capitalism versus trying to get into the trap of, my ideal system has never been tried. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Communism, as it is generally understood, is usually the end goal of anarchists. The main reason why people describe themselves as anarcho-communists is in an effort to distance themselves from authoritarian communists, who one would usually say like aren't actually communists. They're like some kind of state capitalist or whatever. I understand the distinction. Of all the terms that I think would apply to my beliefs, communist is the one that I use the least, if only because there is the most misinformation surrounding its, historical use.
yeah. All right. Well, so then anarchism, no government, right? I mean, or is there
No state.
Am I missing something with that? So no state.
Yeah.
How is it possible to have a government without a state? Is not government, the state?
Well, a state, at least in leftist literature, as I understand it, is a pretty specific political construct that's mostly arisen in a post-feudalist society, where, like, for example, with a monopoly of force, distinct borders, that sort of thing. Whereas a government is ubiquitous. A family unit is a government. Any form of social organization that predicates any person's authority over any other is a type of government. I think government is an innate part of human existence. I like government. I think governments could be good. But a state, to me, is something which is very easily corruptible. It is one of the hierarchies that I would not consider just.
Yeah, I mean, aren't all those hierarchies ultimately corruptible?
I think they are to different extents, yeah. I don't think there's ever a hierarchy that is completely immune to being made a bad thing, but there are some types that serve better uses than others. The state, I think, is one that causes has a tremendous potential for harm, whereas, for example, the hierarchy of a parent over a child, or of or the hierarchy of expertise, for example, where people who know more about a given industry would have some level of authority speaking to others. I think these are fairly justifiable hierarchies, in my opinion.
Well, see, I think they're justifiable, but I think they're justifiable in the same sense that a state would be justifiable, which is to say that the alternative is worse. Like the state of like the hierarchy of the family is certainly has its problems depending on how that family turns out, but it's generally better. As I think you mentioned this actually, this specific example with Adam Kokesh. It's better than like growing up on the streets, like no family, right? And similarly, I feel like the same logic goes up the chain with all these hierarchies, right up to the state itself. Like I spend a lot of time, I know, on my stream, and as I'm sure you do on yours, talking about the state has all these problems, it does all these things bad, Cheeto Benito, on and on. I like that term, by the way. I picked that up the other day. But ultimately, the state, through its monopoly on violence, is still ultimately necessary for us to live together in some fashion more peaceably than not, right?
At this moment, I would agree with that. I think the abolition of a state at this point in time would just lead to chaos. It would be a failed society. I think that ultimately the state serves a purpose, which is to maintain order and a sort of regimented hierarchical status amongst its citizenry for everyone who's within its jurisdiction. And at the moment, I think that's a necessary and good thing. But I do think it is possible for other forms of societal governance to replace that need, and that we can therefore, after, say, for example, the rise of a democratic workers' state, we can find other governmental systems that might be able to do those jobs with less capacity for harm in the long run.
So I think what gets me then is I agree with you that to make any transition, you need the state. Well, first of all, I guess I view the state as I don't view the state as a fundamentally bad or unjust thing. I'm at least have not yet been convinced that there is any possibility really for any kind of happy, productive, healthy society in any way you describe those terms without a state of some kind underlying it, kind of underwriting all of that with its monopoly of force. But I think that even to get to a future without a state, as you've described it, it seems like there's a transitional period that requires extreme state involvement. And what tends to trouble me about discussions of socialism is that whatever the end goal is, it seems like there's a transitional phase that requires just really extreme state involvement. Like, for example, if you're talking about the democratization of the workplace, even if you view that as a good goal, and I would start off saying I have no problem with anybody wanting to start their own democratically organized workplace. I think it's as fine a goal as any other. But to get to that, for those who don't want to democratize their workplaces, would seem to involve a large amount of force. And it just seems like to kind of build this kind of society, to get to this end goal, you've got to use a lot of force in what we both agree is a pretty fundamentally corruptible state. And it just doesn't seem like, it seems like the bad outcomes you get in the process are not worth, I think, the speculative benefits.
Yeah, I don't advocate for an expansion of state force. I do believe that force is the agent which moves the dialectic forward. That's how we get societal progress. Excuse me, sorry. But for me, the act of a state mandating the democratization of workforce would be as much an involvement of the state in the affairs of an individual's life as the state outlawing slavery. It wouldn't be the state assuming ownership of anything. It would merely be them correcting an unjust state of affairs. The state didn't really expand when slavery was abolished, after all. Or, if it did, I'm certainly not aware of it. It seems like it was fairly tangential. To me, the expansion of powers would come ultimately from the citizenry. I don't want to expand the power of the state past maybe Medicare for all. I could see maybe an argument for the decommodification of housing. But when it comes to that specifically, I wouldn't want the state to step up and seize industry as part of a transition towards worker ownership. And as a final point, I also want to say, with regards to the necessity of a state. Stateless societies have been around for just about as long as people have. It's been for a comparatively short time, at least in a political science sense, that states have been around. Feudal societies weren't really states as we understand them today. And if we want to talk about the necessity of a state to govern people, I would argue there are historical examples, the most recent of which probably being the Rojava Project, of a successful, if albeit short-lived, though I would argue for external reasons, system where a non-stated entity regulates itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't deny that they've existed, but I think that right there you explain the problem with those. Like, as much as it feels, I mean, I don't know if we talked about this the last time we talked or what, but I feel like definitely until the coronavirus, probably the most viscerally disgusting thing that President Trump did was basically betray the Rojava to the Turkish military.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Which led to, as far as I can tell, I think that's, again, prior to the 20,000 plus dead from coronavirus, that's got to be the single bloodiest. I don't know if we even know how many people died, but it's absolutely tragic. I mean, it does seem like, though, even that is an example of why a state is necessary, because not only was it propped up by the United States, but it was ultimately crushed by another state. And the first and foremost purpose of a state is, at least as far as I can tell, defense against other states. So I'm not sure how we would get to a point where that could be. I mean, maybe through some kind of technological development, we could get past that, but I don't know that there's a way of getting around that. But I think that what you're discussing in terms of expansion of the state, slavery, I think, is an example of something that though it was a form of private enterprise, was also fundamentally underwritten by the state. right onto the Fugitive Slave Acts of the 1850s that literally required people to, prohibited people from having anything to do with freeing slaves or helping escape slaves, and set up slave patrols. Slave patrols had been a part of the governments of the time for probably at least a century at that point. That was in addition to being an exercise of private power, that was a real exercise of state power as well, maintaining and even expanding that slavery system. So I think democratizing the workplace, I don't think that democratizing the workplace is, I don't think that's a retreat from state power either. It seems like what you're doing is you're taking a kind of property, a business, and you're saying, well, in effect, we are divesting it from you. We're taking it from you, the owner, and we're either going to do that in some fashion that is constitutional by means of, I guess, compensating them, which seems like it's probably not part of the project, given how expensive that would be to do on a big scale, or we're just taking it, no compensation, which is, any way you slice in the United States, a massive expansion of state power.
Yeah, so a few things. First of all, I feel as though you've supplied almost an argument to my point with regards to the slavery argument. That the state was involved in the maintaining of a slave society is true, but it is also true that it is only through the state's monopoly on violence that private property as it exists today can continue to exist. And I would never argue the state be the ones to seize the property of the business holders, only that their workers would. I wouldn't consider it an expansion of state power, for example, if some bill was made to mandate that workers of a given enterprise are now entitled to a certain share of the firm's profits, or that they're collectively responsible for the democratic, management of that firm. I don't think that makes the state any stronger. I think that's just the state facilitating a transition of power, in one instance from the slave holders to the slaves, and in this instance from the capital owners to their workers. Rojava, I don't know if their current predicament is really indicative of the failings of a stateless anarcho-society, because Rojava has held itself up quite admirably under the external pressures it's received, and B, the only reason it seems due to fall is because it's up against Turkey, which is one of the largest militaries in the world. I mean, Rojava is tiny and untrained and unpopulated and unarmed compared to Turkey. I wouldn't expect a stated society with Rojava's level of influence and manpower to be able to fight off against Turkey as well. I actually had a conversation with a person a while back on they were writing this PhD thesis, or political theory, and it had something. It was about the extent to which anarchist societies are capable of defending themselves militarily. It was very interesting. Obviously, we don't have much historical precedent to draw upon, but I don't see much evidence indicating anarcho societies can't defend themselves. And I would expect any such society in Rojava's place to fall to Turkey. And as a final point, I just want to say, I am, though we're sort of referring to this obliquely, I don't believe that the government is ever going to hand over control of privately owned firms to the workers who work there. So while I am fine with the ethics of it, I suppose, that's not what I imagine is going to take place.
Well, so I guess the one thing I'll say to this is the point, all of the situations I can think of with respect to anarchist or anarchist-like societies facing external threats, they all seem to be like power mismatches, like in the Spanish Civil War in Catalonia, or in the I think the Black Army in Ukraine, or the Rojava. It always seems to be a much larger force, the nationalists in Spain, the Soviets in the Soviet Union, and then Turkey here, that is opposed to them. I don't know though it may just be that it's difficult for an anarchist entity to form of any kind of size just by virtue of the nature of the philosophy. Maybe that's not the case. For what I know about the Spanish Civil War, it seemed like it was more challenging for the anarchists to organize in as effective a way as their opponents, the fascists and the Stalinists, who eventually tried to take control of the Republic of Spain. It just seems like it was harder for them to organize. But that said, I mean, if it were possible, if there were anarchist societies that could grow to that size, maybe it would be possible for them to defend themselves. But historically, I mean, it seems like the only examples that come to mind, there's always a mismatch in size. And maybe that's just an element why. Maybe it's just they can't get that large by virtue of their organizational principles. But the one point I don't get about what you're saying is, you're saying with respect to the workers, if the worker, you're saying the state would get out of the way, basically, right? They would get out of the way and let the workers take control, right?
I think I think the only likely possibility of what I advocate for would be some kind of violent action. I don't know if the state would have much of a say in it.
Yeah. It just, what gets me is, I see Fuentes is apparently gone according to your chat. So sounds good.
They're still very happy about his ban off YouTube.
So the thing I get is that itself seems like a form of state action. Like, for example, when the state, like state inaction to me seems like a form of state action. Like, for example, during America's labor history in the 19th century, when it would allow private policemen to beat up union workers, or when it would allow Standard Oil to blow up the facilities of its competitors and kind of build itself a monopoly. Like, state inaction seems like it'd be just as pernicious and brutal as
I don't
state
disagree
action.
with that. Yeah, like or Reagan during the AIDS crisis. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. So I guess, are you saying that the only way to get to this kind of end goal is violence?
Yes, this is the next conversation point here. Yay!
I want to say I would agree if there were some means by which the state would sort of retract itself for a time and allow a seizure of property, then I would consider that a participation by the state. But I wouldn't argue it's an expansion of state power. Even if there were ways in which state power needed to be expanded in order to facilitate this transition, like some new regulatory agency mandating workplace democracy, something like that. I don't know. I would find it acceptable because it would be an extension of state power towards an end of greater equality. Much in the same way that I'm perfectly okay with, say, for example, putting more money into the EPA or the education department. But
that's the thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, I want to be clear. I don't like to LARP as a revolutionary or anything. I don't know how far away we are from any type of violent action in this country. I don't know how it'll happen or when it'll happen. It seems historically like an inevitability that at some point something will happen. And when that point arrives, I believe that there are going to be certain internal mechanisms of our system that people are going to be fed up with, and we're going to take one of several paths away from it. And if we are to make that decision, the path I would like to see people take is one towards socialism and workplace democracy. But until then, all I can really do is advocate for the moral righteousness of my positions, maybe advocate for policies that warm people up to it. Bernie Sanders wanted 20% of every firm being owned collectively by the workers of that firm, for example, which is pretty based, pretty epic, I'd say.
Well, so I guess there are two things. One, any kind of retreat of state authority seems like it basically would jeopardize, like not any retreat of state authority, but the total retreat of state authority would seem to jeopardize a lot of like, it seems like once you let that genie out of the bottle, it's hard to just, to limit where it goes. And I guess the example I can think of where a state allowed a form of bottom-up, the example I'm thinking of where something like this happened is in Iraq after the United States deposed Saddam Hussein, but before it had an effective occupation going. There's about a week of looting, retributive violence, and the response of the Department of Defense and Donald Rumsfeld at the time was basically, well, people seeking freedom, ultimately, they need the freedom to seek their freedom. And they just allowed this to go on for days. And it seems like that kind of like, I don't know what kind of limited scope you're thinking there, but it seems like anarchy in that sense is just the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must, not some kind of bottom-up egalitarianism.
Oh, no, I completely agree. Yeah. I'm not advocating for a revolution. I'm only saying I believe one is going to happen. And then when it does, we should be the strongest ones. Because I think that, at the end of the day, I'd rather it be us than Nazis, I mean, if I had to choose, if I had to roll the dice. I know that sounds like a very passive position to take. Like, oh, I'm not advocating for anything. I just want the day to come. I understand that. However, I do want it to be known. Like, I think a lot of people on the left are unwilling to recognize the fact that revolutions are horrible, bloody nonsense. They very rarely go how you want them to. They're horribly destructive. They lead to an enormous amount of unnecessary death. It's not, I think, something we should look forward to. But if one were to believe this is something which is to happen anyway, one should take advantage of it, no? And in the meantime, if there is a chance, unlikely as it may be, historical materialism, if there is a chance, these changes can be made electorally through passionate advocacy, I will jump on that method first every single time.
So I guess what I don't quite understand is then why wouldn't you, and I'm not trying to ascribe a label to you,
No,
what I don't quite understand is it seems like what you're describing is basically social democracy, right? I mean, incremental improvements, maybe not incremental, but serious improvements, but not full-scale revolution. I mean, and ultimately, while I refer to myself as a neoliberal because I place more focus on the value of and the potential of markets, ultimately, it seems like probably where we differ is in the scale of the social welfare state, and the scale of the social welfare state, and I guess I don't know what else, because I guess also democracy in the workplace. Like you
That's
you
very
want that
important to me,
democracy, and that I guess I don't understand really why that is so important. It seems like in the United States, at most levels of government, especially outside of presidential elections, democracy is, it's essential because the state has a monopoly of violence. And so every adult has to have the right, I think, to participate in that system because the state has a monopoly of violence over them, including prisoners. I think the only argument you can make, and I think this is a somewhat tenuous argument, the only argument you can make for excluding people is like citizens, not citizens versus non-citizens. And ultimately, I believe we should have something approaching open borders and the chance for every non-citizen to become a citizen within some reasonable period of time. But, to me, that's justified by virtue of the fact that the state has a monopoly of violence. And there's no other way to hold it accountable because of that monopoly other than to break that power up in some fashion and distribute it. But when it comes to business, while a lot depends on market design and the role of government and, how business friendly it is, whether we're talking about a state that is friendly to capitalism, but has, but protects the rights of workers, or a state that is, all in for business and crushes workers. It seems like, if you've got that first kind of state, then if you don't like your business, you can just start your own, work somewhere else. You've still got that element of choice. Whereas, you've got that element of choice. You don't have a monopoly of force when it comes to business or capitalism. So why use government to bring democratization of the workplace when you could just, look at policies that might make it easier for people to start co-ops on their own voluntarily, that might make it easier for people to start their own small businesses, things like that.
Yeah, well, to me, saying that we can just advocate for people to start their own businesses and have them be worker co-ops would make as much sense as saying that rather than abolishing slavery, we should just encourage people to open up plantations where they pay their workers. To me, it's a moral wrong for people to be working in places that don't have a degree of political representation. I want to clarify, I understand what you were saying earlier with the SOCDEM versus socialism point, but I am in favor of incrementalism when incrementalism works and revolution when revolution works. I don't believe for a moment that I'll ever be able to get my workplace democracy passed through Congress or any other such electoral body. But I mean, I'll work along any line of action that I think is effective. I'll work with neoliberals. I'll do grassroots work if I have to, or I'll, talk about which government buildings house which people who were responsible for which bill that led to the death of how many people. Whatever level of action is necessary to bring about good, I'm willing to work there. But when it comes to the socialism or revolutionary element here, the reason why I care so much about workplace democracy is because I believe people should have a right or a say in any system that has control over their lives. And while it is true that no business on its own has as much control over the life of a citizen as the state does, I would argue that collectively the business class has as much, if not far more, control over the lives of Americans than the state ever could. When do we operate within? When do we advocate against? When do we contend with the state? Once every few years when we vote. We see the effects of state policy, of course, when we live about our days, how our roads are upkept, our regulations. But for the most part, we live our lives in our house and in our workplace. But our workplaces are tyrannical. We have no control over what goes on there. There are no, for at least for most Americans, reasonable alternative to selling your labor to another so that you can continue to live. To me, this is unquestionably a form of slavery. It's not as bad as chattel slavery, of course. I would never make that argument, but it is fundamentally unjust. And I think there are lots of downstream benefits we could get from abolishing that hierarchy. One of the biggest ones would be that many of the policies our government passes seem far, far, far more geared towards representing the interests of the hyper-wealthy than they do the citizenry. There's data to indicate this. That can only be the product of people more powerful than us weighing the scales on our democracy. And that's not something I think is acceptable.
As a point of clarification, where does a contract worker fit into this? Like, where does somebody who does work for a contract but not for a wage?
I think that's a good question. I think it's really complicated. I've read different theories on how contract workers specifically fit into the purview of workplace democracy. I've never seen anyone argue that workplace democracy means that there should be no such thing as contract workers. Sometimes you just need an artist to pay to sign outside your door. Sometimes you just, need like a mason to come in and fix stonework on the foundation of your property. I don't think you should have to make those partial owners of your business. It's really difficult. The only thing I would hardline argue is that anyone who attempts to use contract work as a way of avoiding acknowledging the fact that it's effectively a full-time employee, that would be something that would have to be mandated out. Like if someone's working 30 hours a week and they're like, oh yeah, you're a contractor, I think that would be an issue.
So why is there a difference between somebody who does contract work with a variety of, let's suppose that we don't have a particular number here, but if you're saying 30 hours a week would basically make you an employee. If you had some small enough number of hours a week spread out among some small enough or some large enough number of people you contract with to make that not, I guess, meaningfully different from employment, right? So why is it that then when you enter into a relationship with somebody and say, all right, in exchange for for guaranteed work, a set number of hours and hopefully some benefits, you agree to show up and do this amount of labor in this amount of, this particular field, for the company. Like, why does that suddenly become more exploitative or more unjust? I
don't think there's a hardline answer to the contractor question or the CQ, as experts say. I imagine.
What I'm getting is you refer to employment as something akin to slavery, which is a pretty massive claim.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's got to be something there that really that makes that a real big deal rather than another form basically of contractual relationship.
Well, I think the contractual relationships can often be exploitative as well. To me, it's the scope of the problem that really magnifies the extent to which this is an issue. Do I think it's exploitative, for example, for a teenager to go to like the lawn of an elderly neighbor and say like, hey, I'll mow your lawn for $10? I don't really think so. Maybe some weird thing could happen to make it bad, but I think that's fundamentally okay. The main issue that I have is that as wage work framework exists in our society today, it brings about the existence of two different economic classes. It's not just in the minutia of an individual action and their individual ability to negotiate their wages. It's that these things reify like a massive society-wide, or I guess in this place, planet-wide economic wall that separates people with a very specific set of privileges and people who don't have those privileges. As for the contractor thing, I just want to say I acknowledge that is a problem because I don't think there's a way to perfectly draw the line there. I feel as though there is always going to be some room for exploitation with contractors unless the mode of commodity is abolished, unless we abolish the profit motive. But in the meantime, I think we can make significant ground on that issue.
Well, can I just jump in? Well, can I just jump in here?
Yeah,
Maybe just
ahead.
throw a question just to see if we possibly have a different answer. In terms of a contractor relationship, who would we say owns the means production in that sense? Because if someone comes in, let's say construction, wants a different person come in who has a semi-trailer, that person owns a semi-trailer as a contractor, then who owns the means production in that sense?
I would argue that in the case of contractors, very often the term ownership of the means of production isn't really relevant. Usually contractors will have their own goods and services they can provide, like an artist who is themselves the means of production, but that doesn't give them an advantageous relationship with the person they're negotiating with. I think the term ownership of the means of production, along with the distinction between the bourgeois and the proletariat, is very largely like a 19th century distinction, and that when it comes to issues like contract work, we have to be much, much, much more precise with how we describe things.
Well, so I get you with the distinction between the bourgeois and the proletariat, but that I guess gets to my first question as to what you said. The notion of dividing people into two classes. This is something that I don't quite understand because when we had somebody on the stream the other night talking about the working class, and in a moment of frustration, I said, well, what is the working class, right? Do I count? I don't own the means of production, but I'm an attorney. I've never heard of anybody describe an attorney as a member of the working class. Society seems to be a lot more complex than just two diametrically opposed classes. It seems like a kind of 19th century notion that arose out of the miserable conditions of industrial life in Western Europe.
Technically you would be referred to as labor aristocracy, which is like proletariat, but with like a nice like medallion off your lapel. But with
shoot, you got a flag pin on.
But with regards to the distinction there, I do agree that at times reducing everything to a paleo-Marxist analysis can be really, really reductive, though it's still useful, I guess, as a ground framework. My argument would be this. All frameworks that we use to adjust or address systemic and hierarchy are at times necessarily reductive. If, for example, somebody wished to do research on the... Oh, goodness. If somebody wished to do research on the ways in which colonialism has impacted the relationship between people of different skin colors across the world, they would have to look at a huge range of social conditions through the lens of race specifically. And if you talk about racism, sometimes it comes off as reductive too. Like if a black guy is like, hey, I thought that white guy that I was talking to was kind of racist, because he walked in and he saw me and I'm the boss, and then he saw my contract worker who's a white guy in overalls, and he shook that guy's hand first. And he didn't think I was the boss. What, is he black? Nobody knows if it was because he's black, and individually that interaction might not mean much, but as a part of a broader analysis of disparity, I think it's very relevant to analyze things through that lens.
Well, the reason it rubs at me is that it seems to write off. It seems to suggest there's a form of class solidarity among, I guess, people who own businesses, people who have extra money, wealthy people, that I don't know is really there. Like, I know, for example, a lot of the work I do, it involves, basically rich people trying to go at other rich people. I know that socialism, for example, had its best shot at capturing state power in the aftermath of World War I, which was, a massive conflict between people, vested interests of arguably the same basic class, right? the rulers of the countries of Europe. And so I don't know that like in the United States, we do have legislation that is often very business friendly, but that seems like less the result of class solidarity than the result of basically having an administrative state that has a lot of complex functions and that requires people to, if they want to shape it, participate in it. And the regulatory state is so massive, and it's running all the time, and companies pay people to participate in that regulatory system. I do that sometimes, but that just seems to be not a reflection of like class solidarity, as basically the fact that more regulations help those who are more prepared to deal with those regulations. So that doesn't just help businesses; it helps interest groups that have a lot of sway, that are long established, maybe with a legislature. But it seems like the problem of interest groups in our democracy seems a lot more complicated than just the rich make all the rules.
Yeah, and I mean, interest groups are extremely complicated, but I think that ultimately everything and all disparity boils down to lines of privilege and how they cause people to interact. You and I agree that certain demographic conditions will influence people's material interests. For example, like what percentage of black people in America voted for Obama? Like it was like 92. Yeah. It was like a really huge amount. And that's, right. Sure, yeah. And we can see evidence that, for example, wealthy people are biased in favor of more conservative candidates. The wealthier you are, statistically speaking, in this country, the more likely you are to be Republican. Now, there are variances there. If you're wealthy in San Francisco, that's very different than being wealthy in, say, for example, like rural Texas. But as an aggregate, this seems to be the case. What's more, if we look sort of more, in line, we can see that the laws that are passed through Congress tend to disproportionately favor the collective interests of what we would consider to be like the 1%. People who are wealthy are more often satisfied with the laws that come out than people who are not. That could only come about if the people who are wealthy had a different set of average interests than the average person. My argument isn't that people have like perfect levels of class solidarity, only that generally speaking, people are influenced by their material interests. And I would argue that the material interests of the wealthy are and always will be to perpetuate their wealth, even if it means the detriment of others. My final example, I think, and a fairly concrete one at that, would be the labor leaks that happened just 2 days ago. Examples of people within the United Kingdom's Labour Party, a bunch of WhatsApp logs and text leak. Right, were these people who work for the Labour Party. They're unelected officials, they're wealthy, they're powerful, and they did not want Corbyn in office for a very, very, very specific reason. They were even supporting conservative candidates over their own candidate. They were hoarding funds and resources away from Corbyn to keep him from using them. And at the end of the day, it seems like wealthy people or people who control industry have a particular set of distinct interests. And if we can establish that, we must then ask, are those interests something which are to the benefit of the working people, of the average citizen of the country?
So dealing with those issues, though, is something we've dealt with in this country in the past, like not through for example, democratizing workplaces, but through things like antitrust laws, higher taxes on wealthy people. Basically the history of the country from Roosevelt to Roosevelt. Well, I guess the 20s were kind of an exception, but Roosevelt with trust busting, and then Frank FDR with some of the programs, not all the programs, but some of the programs of the New Deal. And it seems like you can get to that end goal of trying to have a society that is fairer, more open, a little more flat in terms of its wealth distribution through those means than through I guess advocating for something which seems like it could not fail. Well, this is a practicality argument, though, and I know we're not really talking about practicality.
There are always 1,000 layers deep to be done on that.
Well, it seems like basically you could get the same goals, a lot of the same goals, a lot easier by creating a society that was a little more fluid for people. So, for example, I will grant you that while I do think that the choice people have between employers is meaningful in most situations, I don't write that off as a non-choice like perhaps you might. But I would acknowledge that it is nevertheless a challenging thing to pick up from your job and work somewhere else. That's not the easiest thing in the world to do, especially in times of economic distress, especially like, right now, for example. And I think it would be great for government to do more to make that choice more tangible, to have something like a universal basic income or to have universal health coverage. I would prefer something more along the lines of the German model that doesn't go as close to nationalization as Medicare for all, but ultimately some kind of guaranteed, healthcare, guaranteed income that would make it easier for people to move about in life, right? Like up their freedom that way, rather than saying, well, we're going to up your freedom at the particular workplace you're in by basically taking the property interest from your employer and distributing it among all of you. I mean, that doesn't even really seem like it would meaningfully increase your freedom to change workplaces. It would only change your freedom within that one workplace.
Yeah. So I think so. Okay, so there are a few points to touch on here. You've said that there are ways that we can bring about positive change within our society without resorting to these very revolutionary, very radical tendencies. And I would agree. I'm not at all opposed to people passing legislation which makes the world a better place. I'm certainly very happy to be. Well, I'm not currently doing wage work, but when I was, I'm very glad I lived now and not a century ago. But the problem has never really been fixed. I mean, things aren't getting better. Things are getting worse. We're currently at the highest level of income disparity in the history of this country's existence. The degree to which people feel alienated and distrustful of the government is unparalleled in the history of this country. There are, this would, I think, require for me to dig through statistics, but I think there are numerous metrics by which we can agree, like the power of the business class over the average worker has grown enormously since the time of Roosevelt, and what's more, none of it has even come close to being sufficient. To me, this seems like a battle against an unkillable foe. As long as we allow capital, privately owned business to exist, we will constantly be fighting against its interests. Every time we want to improve public education or public health care, every single time we want to make society more equal, if we want to increase the livelihood and dignity of the average person, we have to go up against the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world. It seems to me like the only meaningful way to end this conflict would be to end their power. And I don't think there's any way we could ever meaningfully arrive at workplace democracy through electoral means. If we could do so, though, and this is why I care about it so much, that war ends. With workplace democracy, there is no longer any private acquisition of firms, which means there is no longer any exorbitantly wealthy person who single-handedly represents the interest of a firm, which means there's no bourgeois class, which means there's no longer a disparity between those who produce and those who consume, those who own labor and those who have to sell their labor. If we break apart that divide, we break apart the fundamental antagonistic force that has led to virtually every workers' rights and human rights struggle in this country over the past 200 years. There are, of course, other ones like race and gender issues, but a huge amount of contention has been largely aligned along the interests of the worker. We end this war with workplace democracy.
I don't see how you do. I think that you end the it seems like the one thing you would end is the amount of wealth an individual could themselves lay claim to, which would absolutely, I mean, I don't see a way around that. If you really do deprive people, I guess, of the ability to take advantage of their enterprises, to make as much money as they can within the bounds of the law, then you do eliminate that individual wealth disparity. But it doesn't seem like you eliminate the disparities between firms. Workplaces, whatever you'd call them. I would typically use firms, but it's the same idea. It doesn't seem like you eliminate disparities between firms. It doesn't seem like you fundamentally alter capitalism because you've still got competition between firms. I don't think and I don't really think you've changed the interests of the people who run the firms. Now, by democratizing them, I think I think there's often an assumption among some that, well, a democratized workplace will come to better, maybe more humane decisions than a non-democratized workplace. But I don't know that that's something that's really borne out. I mean, for example, people who work in the coal industry have every, understandably enough, interest in perpetuating an industry that nevertheless is not only no longer really economically efficient in terms of its price compared to natural gas, the industry I work in. Mm-hmm. And it's something that has very deleterious environmental impacts. Presumably they have the same interests as any other business, though. They want to survive, they want to maintain their line of work, and just like any other business would. So I don't understand the fundamental change there. I understand that there is a change for the individuals at the top, but it seems like the problem you've described, well, I mean, if that's really what it would do, I mean, it sounds fantastic in some ways. It doesn't seem like flattening out the folks at the top really changes the way firms work. And I mean, the only examples I can reach of to where something like that has happened are, I guess, existing co-ops, which seem to function pretty much otherwise like, any other company. And then kind of government organizations, which, have, they're certainly no more benevolent than, I wouldn't argue they're any more benevolent than any company.
Oh, they're benevolent to their workers. Yeah, there are a few points.
I don't even know about that.
Well,
I mean,
so point by point, I agree.
I'm
with
saying government is not benevolent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say government? I heard co-op. On that last point.
I think co-op.
Okay, no, government's trash. I won't defend that. Okay, so with a few points put there, I do acknowledge the fact that there are still going to be imbalances, or I guess unjust actions committed by firms because of the material interests of those who work there. Coal, natural gas, oil. I acknowledge that. I don't think that's something that I can meaningfully address with market socialism. That would have to be addressed with the abolition of the commodity form, which is the next step. That's the next thing I believe in. But with regards to worker democracies, yeah, I'd be happy to lay out. So for one, the average person works at their business for 8 hours a day, more or less, I guess, probably some variance there. This is a tyrannical system they are forced to be complicit to. Now, while it is true that a business does not have the power of a state to the life of an individual, it is in fact their boss who has far more power than any president, because a president's actions are far away and long after felt. A boss is the person you have to suck up to every single day. Obviously, things vary based on which business you're in or the nature of your employment, and I'm not going to pretend that every boss is like this horrible tyrannical person, but every boss is, at least in a traditionally owned firm, a tyrant to whom a person owes their livelihood, for whom they have essentially no recourse unless that boss does something illegal. That's something that would by definition be fixed with worker democracies. What's more, the fundamental class divide between the wealthy and the poor is something reified not only through their actual level of material wealth, but also their level of individual control. In a workplace democracy, a business exists to serve its workers because the business is owned by the workers. There would be no reason, for example, for a workplace democracy to hoard all wealth at the top, or do things that hurt the workers, or implement policies that are unfair to the workers, because they are voted in by the workers. And while this happens only within that firm, it will happen within every firm, meaning hundreds of millions of Americans will now no longer be subject to the common tyranny of the workplace and will have a greater level of control over their life. Finally, a matter of personal control over society is directed not only by your level of individual wealth, but also by your control over the means of production. Even if we implemented like a flat wealth tax, like every dollar you make above $1 million goes away, in a traditionally owned firm, you could have that flat amount of money and still own the labor of hundreds of thousands of people, which endows upon you certain privileges, one which could, for example, lead to favors in Washington, could lead to no-bid government contracts, could lead to you meeting up with other people who only have $1 million but also control the lives of a huge number of people. And fundamentally, the hierarchy stays the same. It is only through the abolition of private ownership that this divide can finally be ameliorated. And I think, ultimately, that this will lead to a dramatic increase in the well-being of most people's lives, not just the average worker, but to our democracy as well.
I understand the notion. Like I acknowledge, as I think I did a few minutes ago, that it is not the easiest thing in the world to leave a firm, to leave your job, to stand up to your boss. But I think you can acknowledge that without calling employment in a firm tyrannical. Like a firm is fundamentally not a co-op as you described, but it is a voluntary enterprise, and there's no obligation to participate. And what I'm talking about is rather than trying to basically break up and reform these entities, we should try and shoot for a society that makes it easier to transition between entities or start your own to basically not only make it easier for people to live better lives, but also preserve the ability of people to, I guess, actualize their individual freedom by starting a business, trying to improve their lives, something like that.
Is it voluntary though?
I think it is. I think that you can talk about, the ease with which somebody makes a voluntary decision. Like there's kind of, to me, there's sort of first order freedoms of like freedom basically from government compulsion. And then there's sort of second order freedoms, freedom from poverty, freedom from, the freedom, the material necessities that make it more practical to live your idealized kind of life, And if you have a decent social welfare state, decent social safety net, then, if you had something like, for example, a universal basic income, which I talk about a lot, then it's a lot easier to say to your boss, well, hey, get fucked. I'm out of here. I'm going to do something else. Whereas right now, it seems like the reason that's a problem is, not just because of, I guess, the nature of the workplace, but because of the fact that a lot of people don't have a lot of people don't have the resources to basically make that decision and feel responsible in doing so. So I feel like rather than, breaking up somebody's enterprise, we should basically tax and redistribute enough to make it so that people, people have an easier time of leaving, transitioning, starting their own enterprises. I do want to say one other thing about workplace democracy. I guess I acknowledge that it has the potential to be better in a particular enterprise sometimes, but the problems you've described, for example, hoarding all the wealth at the top of the enterprise by means of manipulation, I mean, it ultimately makes me think of, I live in Florida, and Florida is notorious for having a lot of corruption in government, especially local government.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about the kind of, corruption that happens in government. That's not to say that therefore democracy is disproven, but the notion that it fundamentally resolves these problems, I don't know that it does. I mean, I can justify it with respect to the state because, again, monopoly of violence, there's no alternative in my view, but I don't know that I can justify it on those grounds in private enterprise. And I also, I want to say one other thing. I know that you mentioned that abolishing private ownership basically resolves these issues. And I just, I don't think that's the case. I mean, if you could abolish private enterprise and abolish the state, then maybe. But so long as there's a state, and so long as there are organized entities engaged in production in that state, the example I would go to there is the persistence of lobbying, not just in the United States, but in the USSR. And that's not I'm not trying to get into the violence of the USSR, just talking about it as a form of government where private enterprise is not really there, but a state remains. The Central Planning Office had a big cafeteria. It had like 5,000 seats in this cafeteria, but there were only like 1,000 workers at this enterprise. And the reason it was interesting is that fundamentally this was a form of lobbying, right? Where the leaders of enterprises would come to the state to lobby on behalf of their interests. And while they didn't themselves possess a great deal of wealth, this idea of lobbying based on the influence of the industry, the number of people that worked for the industry, it still had a great amount of pull, right, in the system. And that's not to get into anything else about the USSR, but it's to say that lobbying and influence persist even in systems where, you don't have private ownership, but you still have a state. So I don't think you can resolve that problem with it either.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the long run, I'm anti-state too. It's just a matter of tackling systems in the order that I think will bring about the best consequence. I don't know of what relevance the potential corruption within government firms is. Like, I don't know what that has to do really with worker-owned firms, though, because my main contention is that even though firms, traditionally owned firms, are collectively run by a great many people, one or several of whom actually own that firm, usually the interests interests of the firm are going to be governed towards satisfying the needs of those people at the top. In a cooperatively owned firm, the only thing I ask of them, the only thing I would expect of them, is for them to act in their own interest, and they would be, because that's the only interest for them to act into. The decentralization of power usually lends itself to less corruption because there's nowhere for power, and therefore for the misuse of power, to centralize. But with regards to the voluntary question, this is the main thing that I take umbrage with, I suppose, because you say you want to engage in economic policies, what makes it more possible for the average person to for them to form their own business, make informed economic choices. Great. I don't disagree with that. That's not insincere. But not everyone can be a sole proprietor. While it may be a voluntary decision to work at a given firm with some degree of coercion, maybe if there's like nowhere else to work in that place,
Sure.
very few people have the option to work at the only firm type that I would consider acceptable, which would be a co-op, or I guess sole proprietorship, which is what I do. I don't find it acceptable for them to go and start in their own business, because if they do, they will have to hire workers. And then the cycle begins anew. I don't care just about uplifting the proletariat with monetary wealth by making them the champions of the next wave of capitalism. And I don't think that encouraging them to form their own co-ops is any more an addressal of our system as it exists now than, and again, having people just start up plantations that don't have slaves.
Well,
I want an abolition of the immorality, not merely for people to feel free to not engage in it if they want.
I think the
Can I
slavery.
just jump in here? Just
I think.
quickly?
Let me just say, I think the slavery example is not the same. I mean, because ultimately this is literal ownership and coercion of people with no alternative except to suffer violence at the hands of the state or the state's agent, in this case, the person who owns the plantation. And I think that is a demonstrably different situation than anything other than maybe company store style.
Oh, there's a huge difference in
19th
severity.
century capitalism.
I don't
I
agree.
think that it's one thing to say that it's unjust, but I mean I think that the degrees of compulsion are just so different.
Oh, I agree
They're
the
not-
degrees of compulsion are different, but that's why we call it wage slavery, right? It's just
Yeah,
it is an evil of similar form, though obviously chattel slavery is far worse than what we have today. I don't
Where
disagree
is
with that.
Yeah, but where is the fundamental similarity there? In one situation, you do have some choice, though. I'll grant you, it's not always full choice in the sense of having every option you'd like, but you do have some choice. Whereas in the other situation, there is zero choice.
There is the two similarities that are why we make an ethical parallel here. In both instances, the place in which you work is tyrannical, not democratic. You don't get a say in what goes on there. And secondly, you work or you die. Now, obviously, we no longer die. Of course, there's welfare in this country, and you can go to another place. But I don't think that allowing a slave to choose its own master is really a solution to slavery.
I think that at that point, when you say like either you work or you die, I mean, that's like saying that we're all enslaved by the fact that we are hungry and we need to eat as human beings.
I would agree with that.
Point,
I would consider that
point,
natural inequality that we can work to solve through policy. But that's
at
a
certain
natural
point,
inequality, not a forced
wipes out
one.
the value. I think that wipes out the value of the word.
Possibly, but I would agree that they're fundamentally ethically similar. It's a form of unethical commodification of another person's labor, even if the degree to which they're bad is different. I would never, as like a former security guard, walk up to a chattel slave and explain how I have it hard. But I think that this is the slavery of the new age. This is now something we have to contend with. And we're dealing with a very similar moral conundrum. We're maintaining an unethical form of commodity production and worker regulation because it's very profitable for us to do so. And I hope one day we recognize this is the case and we make the same decision we made back then, that violence is the solution to upending this unethical system.
Well, I mean, of course, if it could have been done without violence, that would have been ideal. But of course, violence was the only option we were left with after decades of political stalemate. So, I mean, I grant you that slavery was abhorrent, and it was good that it was ended with violence.
We are both pro-anti-slavery. I'm glad.
Pro-anti-slavery. But let me ask you one more question on this issue to gauge where you're at.
And then we should probably defer to Ryan.
Sure,
after that.
to Ryan, you're right.
That would be lovely.
You said that I think this is what I got. You're not just interested in uplifting people's material circumstances, right?
Mhm.
Suppose, and I'm not saying we do this necessarily, but suppose you had to choose between a system that was less productive and created less material wealth, but provided people with the workplace democracy versus the kind of system I'm just advocating for, where political democracy remains as is, and companies basically operate as they are with the social welfare state. Would you say that the value of workplace democracy is greater than, I guess, if this were the case, if it were not as prosperous, would you say that that democracy counts for more than the prosperity of their overall system? Because I'm curious, like, where your value is there. I'm not saying that this is even necessarily a choice to make, but I'm curious what your value is there.
To an extent, yes. I do think there are degrees of material wealth that I think would be worth sacrificing to bring about that outcome. But past a certain point, I would absolutely agree, for example, that our current level of civilizational prosperity, even with traditionally owned firms, is very preferable to what we could have done a century ago with democratically owned firms. So there's obviously a threshold there. And if we got, at a certain point, the line would probably be really, really blurry. So I don't know like when exactly I'd have to cut that off, but I think it's worth sacrifice.
Okay, wonderful. So is there any final points we want to make before moving on to anything new? Any final statements for that?
I think we've been having a really productive discussion for the most part.
Yeah. It is. It's been wonderful listening to. It's this same thing, because if people don't realize, this was the second time these guys have talked. The first time was on my channel as well, early this year. You guys really don't need moderation too hard at all. It's something.
Unironically, the best faith liberal. Let me tell you, I do genuinely really enjoy talking with you.
Is that Destiny Shade? Is that
Whoa! Getting us on LSF over here. I appreciate my discussions with you, Bastiat. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
no other implications.
It's interesting because one thing I will say before we go to the next topic is I enjoy talking about some of this stuff hypothetically, because of course, by day I spend a lot of time, basically kind of in the nuts and bolts of the system. And I do believe that it is the best system, not like our current incarnation of it, especially not under President Trump, but some form of liberal democracy with capitalism as we generally know it is, until we get to some real serious technological change, the best system for human happiness and development, and maximizing freedom. But what is interesting is it's often hard to talk about some of these ideas with other folks on the left, because I don't know, it's just often hard to do so without getting into a lot of personal. I don't want to say personal attacks, but the discussion seems to get very personal very quick.
It's a very emotionally charged conversation, and I think it's unfortunate because while we discuss things we disagree with, I think that on like 90% of policy prescriptions, I would probably agree with you. In a pragmatist sense, I'm usually in favor of working with people until you no longer can. And I recognize that, holy Christ, of all the fucking people I talk to, of all the political discourse that I've had, I have never had the opportunity to agree as much with a non-leftist as I do talking to neoliberals. I mean, a lot of people act like they're like the scum of the earth or something, but my God, like talk with a Nazi sometime. They're everywhere. Holy Christ.
One of the areas that's interesting where we may overlap is the subject of open borders, because to me, I feel like freedom of movement is fundamental freedom, and borders have value and meaning in the sense of a system of laws. I think that, for example, the Constitution is I think we're real lucky to have it. And so, the borders of the United States are kind of the borders of the rights chartered out in that document. And I think there are a lot of people, though, who will make the argument, well, I was born here, I have ethnic ties here, and therefore my economic interests should supersede your freedom of movement, or your freedom even to ever aspire to citizenship, anything like that. And that's kind of one of the most, we had a real vocal discussion about that with a streamer named Lecture Fan, a conservative on Twitch.
I am familiar with his work.
Yeah, and it's a subject that more than any other, I guess we often get railed on, and it's interesting because that one, usually the folks on the left will agree with that one, not always, but typically. So
Yeah. You want to know what really pisses me off?
what?
Every time I argue with all these like ethno-nationalist types or whatever, they're saying like, oh well, if an immigrant comes in, there's a 0.28% decrease in the wage of 6 people who work at a gas station in Kentucky, and I have to argue like the fucking nuance, the mathematics and the economics and the Heritage Foundation and fucking what's that one guy, the famous anti-immigration Borjas. Yeah, I have to bring out the Borjas studies and stuff, but I never get to unleash my ultimate technique, which is when I look at them in the eye and I say, why the fuck should I care more about the well-being of a citizen than a non-citizen? I never get a chance because they would laugh at me. But
I like to drop my favorite meme was one time somebody was saying, why should I care about these Somalis who want to live in in Michigan? Why should they have a right to live here? Have you ever lived in a community overwhelmed by Somalians? And I was just saying, look, what you're saying is, of course, ridiculous anecdotal racism. But beyond that, I mean, you should recognize that all the data, all the information suggests that basically everybody in this country benefits from immigration with one select exception that seems to be borne out by all the data, and that is people who don't have high school degrees.
Yep.
They lose out from immigration. But the solution to that should be
get everyone a high school degree.
High school degree. Yeah. So, and then I like to go further by saying, look, if you believe in the United States, then presumably you should want a stronger, richer country. And that's what immigration does by all accounts. Almost every time leaves the country better off. Everybody in the country better off. So anyway, it's fun to talk with people who agree with that.
Yeah,
that is true.
Yeah, Ryan, sorry for putting you off so long.
Yeah.
It's
good to have its
based political takes,
Exactly. It's good to have the agreements, but this is called Red Suit Disputes. Okay, we're not here for agreement. All right.
All right.
We're here for the real stuff. Okay, the meaty, juicy stuff.
Exactly.
So I thought we'd get on to the next thing. Would be I think poses a question, but before is the can automation survive with can capitalism survive under automation? But before we get into that, I do want to make a quick call out for people who want to help out during coronavirus. There's a wonderful charity in Australia called Rise Up. It's a domestic violence charity that helps people who are victims of domestic violence relocate and basically have new homes or in shelters, and they'll basically pay for all the living costs, etc. At the moment, with coronavirus, there is a real worrying trend with people being pushed inside domestic violence situations, and there are actually less people reaching out for assistance. And on top of that, a lot of charities are actually finding it difficult to get funding as they're not allowed to put on fundraisers and stuff like that because it's too many people in one select area. However, there's one particular charity that does amazing work. It is looking to try and get $2 a week by 5,000 people so they can have consistent funding no matter what happens. So if you want to help out people, especially during this time where it's very hard, Rise Up. It's in the YouTube description link on my channel. So it's just
post it in the Discord chat so I can post it in my chat as well, please.
Will do. So yeah. So it is. If you want to go to it, it is riseup.com.au. The AU is the good old Australian end tag because that's the most important thing. But yeah, if you really want to help out, especially like I said with, I'm trying to get into the chat right now. It's just annoying me. I feel like the boomer here, and I'm the youngest.
Wait, are you younger than us? Wait. How old are you, Bastian?
Do you want to guess?
Wait, no, I remember. I asked you this. Right. I asked you this last time, and you were older than I expected.
Yeah, I'm 32.
32. Damn it! I was thinking 32, but I thought that was too much. All right. Okay. Sorry.
Yes, and I'm 20. So
what the fuck? Yes. Okay. All right. I'm not gonna think about it.
How old are you, Mosh?
I'm 26.
Jeez, I wish I couldn't grow a beard like that at 26.
Yeah, I was.
I had to wait till 30 for the mustache to connect.
I mean, it looks good. When I had to start shaving at like 12. It was a nightmare.
Good deal.
Yeah. So again, if you want to help out, make sure you want to help out those domestic violence people in needs. specifically Australia, because we are the most important country. It's not about whiteness. I don't want to make it that way, but
Hey, when the Yellowstone supervolcano blows up, I often think about starting a new life in Australia. So
that is true. Everyone does, and everyone should, and everyone should ignore New Zealand.
I'm never going back to Australia. You're never getting me back there. That place is
have you ever
disgusting.
been? Really? Oh man, it seems so cool.
So
although
hot.
New Zealand,
And
Yeah,
their
I haven't been
flies.
yeah, ooh, I haven't thought about that.
Their flies are huge. They knock over trees when they sway in the breeze.
Look, bullflies are something else. They do, like, they hurt when they bite. But that's that is
No!
It's one of those things you sort
That's
of
not
forget.
okay.
Damn.
you sort of forget those things. But it's not that
Yeah.
hot. It's autumn now. It's getting cooler. It's in the 20 degrees, and I can say that in Celsius, and that
Yeah.
sounds pretty cold for you
See,
guys. in Fahrenheit.
I unironically don't even know what that is. I think that's somewhere between frozen and 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
I think
really don't know.
I only know Fahrenheit, with 100 being like really hot, and then
Yeah.
like 30 being freezing.
Yeah, it's like
That's the only
100
two-
degrees.
It's in between.
100
It's about in
degrees.
between there.
100 degrees is a real manly temperature, all right? I don't know what 32 C is, but anyway. Oh my God, is that what they look like?
They're
Oh,
huge.
Actually, yeah. They unironically.
That's
hurt
not a
to
bee,
bite.
guys. That's not a bee.
wow.
That's a fly. Our ants, we have jack ants, which are about like that long. Jumping jack, the jumping jacks, those things bloody hurt as well. But that's
And you have
okay. They're a
cicadas.
bit more rural.
The price
Oh,
of
they're cute.
paradise.
They're amazing.
When you kick
like-
a
they get-
tree, their husks fall on you.
Yeah, but they're like shells, and they're really like cute. But
Okay, all
That's-
right. We clearly have very different temperaments for the outdoors. Okay.
that like, I like this. I guess this does show
Hey,
my.
you should Ryan, have you ever been to the US?
No, I'm inland forever. No.
Those bees are spooky, but a bath salt face eater down here in Florida, that's pretty spooky.
Bath
too.
salt face eater, is that like a method? I don't
Yeah,
understand. Like,
something like that. Yeah, it's pretty tragic, but it's a pretty crazy state.
we just have ice heads. I think that's just Australian math to an extent. But no, cicadas aren't bad. They just sort of.
Yes, they
just
fucking
sit
they're
there.
like crickets, but 20 times the size. They're heavy enough to hit you, and they're loud as shit. No, I'm sorry, you're wrong on this.
They're
You're
not-
objectively
they're not
wrong.
an issue. Oh, sorry. Who's the one who lives with them? Who's the one who, like, sorry, we're gonna have look at pictures and be like, "Ooh, scary," when they literally do
This is
nothing.
speaking of domestic abuse. This is Stockholm syndrome, okay? Because you've gotten so used to some truly unethical shit.
Look, the only things you should be scared of in Australia is the birds and the things in the water. Okay, everything else can be killed with a
Oh
fucking
yeah,
shoe.
you've got
Alright?
sharks too. don't you?
Okay, like let's be real. All right, saltwater crocodiles and magpies, two scary motherfuckers. All right, and blue bottles and all those jellyfish and sharks. Who gives a shit? Punch them in the gills. All right.
A lot of
Water
things.
and air. Those are the two things you have to be scared
It's a
of.
lot of things you have to list off, but okay.
So maybe that's a problem that can be solved by automation, huh, Ryan?
That's exactly right. Thank you for that little pivot there. I was about to get to it. I got very flustered just then. Okay, no one's
I
gonna
gotcha.
stamp on my country. All right,
I respect that.
I'm open borders, but god damn, I need national pride.
I respect that.
But that being said, so Bassy, I'm going to pose this question more specifically at you. With automation, etc., coming forward, and automation generally suggests that there'll be less people working as more sort of machinery will take positions. How do you think? Do you think a capitalist system can really function in that way when, I guess, there's the things that will be in control of the automation will be in businesses?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on what the society looked like what the technology looked like and how it all worked. But I would acknowledge that if capitalism were ever to be superseded, it would be in a society where I think this is my thinking out loud. I read a book called The Lights in the Tunnel by Martin Ford, where he talked about a lot of these issues about 5-10 years ago. And it was really interesting. It was kind of terrifying at first, but I guess the degree of how terrifying automation is just depends on how policy looks at that point in time. But I tend to think that once a huge part of the population becomes basically unemployable, like if this is how automation works, if it bucks the trend of new technology creating new jobs to make up for, or more than make up for, the jobs that are destroyed, if it really is different this time, then maybe at that point capitalism is superseded by something else. Like maybe the means of production are now so efficient and so automated and so naturally centralized. Like if you had replicators like Star Trek, for example, that could just make anything, and production was really super simple because of high technology, at that point maybe capitalism disappears because most human labor is now superfluous, but I think that's a long way off and depends on a lot of big technologies come down the pipe. But I would say that to the extent I think capitalism will be superseded, I think it will be because of big technological shifts like that rather than some kind of violent revolution.
Yeah, I don't think that automation necessarily entails the death of capitalism. It seems to me that there's a line I'm fond of, which is only under capitalism could labor being made more efficient be an economic crisis. And it's a good gotcha, and everyone titters and stuff. But realistically, any kind of huge economic upheaval is going to lead to problems in whatever system you're running. I think it's possible for capitalism to survive, but the existence of increased automation would necessarily entail a huge shift in the way we morally justify work and compensation, because one of two things can happen. Either we find work for the displaced or we don't. Either we move to some sort of post-automation, highly creative, highly service-oriented economy where we no longer need humans involved in the production of cars or what have you, but everyone out there is a good mocha maker. Everyone out there can sing a good song or dance a good dance. And I personally like that. Because as a leftist, the idea of automation freeing us from monotony and allowing us to pursue creative interests is the point. One hopes. And the other thing that could happen is that we just have to do some kind of like UBI thing where we just keep people alive and we just accept they're like dead. Like they just become like an underclass of people where in the areas they're in they have trouble finding work, and we just kind of accept they're just a drain, but we don't want to let them die. I don't think we're gonna do the latter. I do think we're a little bit more civilized than that, at least domestically. I really hope that automation can bring about good, but we would need to respond to it appropriately.
Yeah, it would depend on how it came about too. Like there's a great book called Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut where he talks. Have you read it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I read I've only read that and Slaughterhouse 5 of his, but it was I think his first book, Player Piano. It's really good. It's basically the second kind of society of automation you described, where there's a class of engineers. They're like the ones who are the focus of the story. Presumably there are CEOs and decision makers, I guess, but it's mostly them and engineers who make new means of automation. And then everybody else is either in the army, or the civil equivalent. The
Civil Corps, run around fixing roads.
Yes. And most of their labor is superfluous, almost shamelessly superfluous. So a lot of people just spend their time just kind of consuming. And there's a sort of a permeating feeling of like, wow, society's really meaningless. What's interesting, the book is kind of tragic too. It's a really good book. I agree, it's based, but the book also has a tragic ending because what happens is there's an uprising led by some former engineers who have made themselves obsolete, and they wreck a bunch of machines. And what is the first thing they do? The first thing they do is, right, Vosh?
Oh shit!
Should I not spoil it? Oh my God, did I spoil it?
Spoiler alert!
Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna spoil if it was my turn. So if you want to spoil now to preemptively sort of muddy the waters.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Sorry.
Take the blame, Bassett. Take the blame.
I should have said spoiler alert. But all right. So if you don't want to hear how it ends, turn down for a second. But basically, the first thing they do is they start putting together new machines to do stuff, because after a little while, it's like, hey, wow, this is a really cool thing I can do. I can create a machine that makes orange juice. I can create a machine that does this. I can create a machine that does that. And so the same problem results. So
so perfect. This reminds me of a Zizek lecture, okay? Because this, I think, is a perfect representation of technological development without ideological guidance. So the problem we have here, fundamentally, the book is, it takes place from the perspective of people who are seeing all their jobs being automated. Oh, look at what these cool new machines can do. It's funny, it's quite antiquated now from our perspective, because one of the newfangled machines that they were saying could replace the work of a woman she was a switchboard operator. And they were saying like, oh, a machine could direct the calls without you needing to plug this into that. Like nowadays, of course, that's been done for decades. But whatever the case is, and it's very funny. There's this revolutionary period at the end of the book where they fail at the end, and the sort of charismatic leader they've adopted to represent their anti-automation revolution is like, wait, I thought we were going to win. All of you fuckers told me we were going to win. Why are we losing? And they were like, the only chance we had at winning is if you believed we were going to win. We never had that much of a chance. It's such a good fucking book, and I think it speaks so much to the necessity of a moral shift in how we understand the importance of work, because these people, they automate all their jobs away. No one meaningfully speaks of what a society looks like in a world where labor becomes irrelevant. Instead, they just look to fill people's time or fill up the last few jobs a robot cannot do. And when people get angry, their anger is directed at the automation, not at the heads of society, which actually ordain how labor is distributed. It's it's such a fucking good book. But I agree, automation is something we should be embracing. I disagree. I disavow. I don't like the anti-automation trend that comes from lefties sometimes. I think it's cringe as fuck. Very slightly, but you know what is a thing? Protectionism. I don't like that either for the exact same reasons. The mechanisms of our economy move forward. This could be a tremendously good thing. We just need to understand how to build society around those mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I guess we'll know it's real if it suddenly becomes the case that just we can't, no matter how good the stock market does, no matter how many tax credits we offer, we just can't get like unemployment beyond like, once we start to see, I guess, like what, 10-20%, and we just can't shake
it forever.
I don't know. Yeah. In that kind of situation. But I guess the good news is it probably won't all happen at once. I do think that I think I share what it seems like is your optimism that it'll be a better future, because I think it'll happen progressively. And the thing that's interesting about automation is that if you follow the logic and you really do believe there's a point at which job, like suddenly a lot of the population has no work. Really, I mean, that includes, the medallion wearing bourgeoisie like myself, but that also eventually will include the CEO. I mean, that'll include the judge. That'll include a lot of people that right now we might imagine have very esteemed, or whatever males you might ascribe to them, a unique skill set. They're just as subject to automation as anybody else. I remember Milton Friedman used to have a really good line where somebody would say, do you want to abolish the Fed? And he was like, not really, but I think I'd just like to replace it with a computer, And there's no reason that you couldn't, you couldn't follow the logic to its conclusion, and just there's no reason for anybody to be doing this work.
My main concern is the moral individualism. It's typically, I'm not besmirching you because I know you don't believe this, but it's typically associated with like Reagan or Thatcherite like liberalism. The idea that if you are poor or if you are unemployed, this is a reflection of your moral failing. My main concern would be that if unemployment starts ticking up along with automation, rather than saying like, oh shit, we got to do something about this, Yang was right. Instead we say like, oh wait, why didn't they learn how to code? And we just mock like a progressively larger portion until one day someone wakes up and they're like, wait a second, a quarter of our country can't work. What the fuck are we doing? And by that point, like people are already like suffering tremendously.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up protectionism, and I mean, admittedly, for those who may have thought I was, who may have come over to me as one of the good liberals, I do like a lot of what Reagan and Thatcher had to say, and I do like a lot of what they did.
Oh,
but
shit.
not all of it. Not all of it. I grant you, for example, the AIDS crisis. But
I would be upset if you didn't.
I grant you a lot of the things that they did, but I do think that, a lot of the basic tenets of, individual freedom, government is the problem rather than the solution to the problem. I mean, I do take some of that to heart, But that being said, I think that what you're right about the idea of moralizing, making poverty into like a moral failing is absolutely harmful and destructive. And it's not. I like one thing that Andrew Yang said, which is poverty. Well, I think he said this. It may have been somebody else in the kind of the UBI orbit. Poverty is not a moral failure. It's a lack of cash. A lack of resources.
That is true.
Yeah.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah. So that's a big point of disagreement between me and them. But yeah, so I think that you're right though. That is a big problem, especially if like one of the things that really concerns me, like the one saving grace about Donald Trump is that he is old. But if we had some younger, more competent version of that, who knew how to control himself a little better, I mean, can you imagine just kind of the horrors they could
Oh shit! Wait. Now this might trend us towards accelerationist rhetoric right here. This is that what you just said is the reason why a lot of people are Bernie or bust.
Well, no. Oh, now in the idea that that it's likelier that we'll get that if we have an interregnum of Biden. I don't.
You don't believe that?
No.
Okay.
I think that the notion that we'll have an easier time getting rid of Trump by having 4 years of Trump, I think it's likelier.
Do you acknowledge the logic but disagree with it, or do you think it's an incoherent argument?
Let's see. So the logic, I'm tempted to say yes, I disagree with the logic, but let me try and think it through first. So the logic is, if we get rid of Trump and we have Biden, then Biden basically, you don't cure the problem with
the
Biden.
System is kept as it is, but meanwhile the Republicans have 4 years to consolidate their political power behind a much more intelligent populist.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the case. Okay. With Trump, you have 4 more years of ever degrading institutions. And then I think by the time you're done with President Trump after 8 years, I mean, I would be really worried about the ability to have, I hate that this feels somewhat melodramatic, but I really hate that it doesn't feel melodramatic. I'd be really worried about the ability to hold a truly free and fair election, at least in a lot of states. I mean, after 4 years of President Trump, after a Supreme Court that is no longer 5-4, but maybe 6-3 or 7-2, and that is a meaningful difference. It's worth noting.
Oh yeah.
Too.
Oh, I'm vote blue no matter. No, I completely agree.
No, I'm not trying to, and I really I know this doesn't mean much coming from a what's the word, shit lib, but I think that
Omni liberal, that's the one.
I tend to go with
Destiny Gang rise up. No. I agree.
Like, there's a meaningful difference between like
today. He was talking about how like the powers of the president are unlimited. He's nonstop joking about abolishing term limits. He constantly talks about like restrictions on free speech. He doesn't engage with free press. Like, I don't know. And what's interesting to me is a lot of people say like, well, what if we had a more intelligent populist, like populist fascist? Because I'm fine with. I would consider like Bernie is a more intelligent populist than Trump is. I hope we can agree on that at least.
Yeah, and I preferred Biden over Bernie because of that populism, but I would have absolutely voted for Bernie over Trump.
Okay, so no Biden or bust here. Say okay, just making sure. But with regards to the potential harm that Trump can do, I actually wonder if his stupidity might actually make him stronger. That actually the thing we need to be worried about isn't a hyper competent, calculating fascist or like white nationalist, but rather an idiot that is so attention grabbing that it allows people to ignore what's going on behind the scenes. Because every day there's a new fucking scandal with him. He just defunded the WHO, but I feel like a conniving like president wouldn't be able to obfuscate their actions with the like dumb fuck aura, that he has.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't disagree with that. And I would add to that by saying that the one thing, one of the real advantages of quote unquote insiders, and in this sense I would consider Bernie to be a quote unquote insider too, somebody who has worked in the political system, for a long time.
Gotcha.
He was
I'll accept your definition for now,
right?
Yeah,
in that sense. Now, not in the establishment tent, but somebody who has operated in the halls of government for a long time. I think there's a set of basic norms that go along with that, or that go along with maybe a lifetime spent in like the practice of law, or in basically in participation in systems that I think that maybe narrows the range of what you feel is acceptable once you have power. Like, for example, Bernie, maybe this is a reflection of this. He said he wouldn't get rid of the filibuster. And I think that was probably a reflection of the fact that I'm not sure of his reasoning, but I think it was something, I would guess it was, look, we know that the filibuster is nice to get rid of when you're in power, but when you're not in power, it's nice that it's there, you know?
I think I agree with that. If you don't know what the fuck you're doing and you have no prior experience and no one's told you what the limits are, you can swagger in and do almost anything.
Yeah, and a huge thing that President Trump has revealed is how much of our system of government, unfortunately, is based not on like laws, but on norms. Like the whole idea of putting all your assets in a blind trust. Turned out that was just a norm that everybody else, I think everybody else, had just been following up to that point in time. And then suddenly Trump comes in and says no, and there's nothing stopping him except an emoluments clause nobody has ever interpreted. And here we are.
You don't store all of your money in like a safe box that you bury in the backyard? How much gold do you have on your property? You seem like the kind of guy who would have a lot of gold somewhere on your property. Something about your hair and suit. Am I wrong?
Hey. Across multiple of his properties.
I think that's well, you know, the reason you have to have multiple properties is to make sure nobody knows which yard to dig up. But the I don't.
Okay, just get no moral value.
I think that's your difference between maybe a neoliberal and a libertarian who will insist that gold is money.
No, I'm not I'm not like an abolish the Fed type. Okay, wait. Actually, I'm really interested in. Oh wait, fuck. There were questions I was going to ask you. Okay, wait, hold on. So two things. First of all, I guess we can do this sequentially. With regards to the Federal Reserve, okay? The Federal Reserve is, and everything concerning its policies, really, really complicated. One of the things that I've learned over the past year is to not be arrogant over economic issues within the capitalist discourse. When it comes to like social issues or like moral, I feel like I'm a sociologist. I can make these claims confidently. But when it comes to like the Federal Reserve, like stuff gets really nuanced. Do you think, in your opinion, I'm curious, do you think what we have right now, which is businesses going bankrupt because they don't keep enough cash on hand, so they need to have their bonds liquidated by the Federal Reserve, who's lending out a ton of money. Do you believe this speaks to a flaw in the system, or do you think the coronavirus shit is so exceptional that there's no way anyone could have prepared for needing this much cash on hand to keep their businesses afloat?
I think well, with respect to businesses not having enough cash, I think it's kind of a multi-layered issue because one, I think the coronavirus on its own is pretty unique, but what is also unique, to keep talking about Trump, is the degree to which the federal government of the United States, which previously was kind of the vanguard for dealing with international disease outbreaks, has just fucked it up so badly. So I think and then, had to make up for its fuck up with a big series of just, a huge patch of, random arbitrary closings and things like that. So, I mean, I do think it's a little different than, an ordinary economic downturn. But that said, I guess it just feels like an example of kind of good government to me, where I think one of the overwhelming causes of the Great Depression was fractional. Well, I'm not going to pretend to be an economist, but based on my understanding, a huge part of that was, our banking system depends on fractional reserve banking, which I think is a good thing in the sense of if you put $10 into the bank only has to have so much cash on hand and it can loan the rest out and therefore basically keep money going rather than having it sitting in one place. And I think that's a generally good thing to have money, to not have so much money sitting around in one place doing nothing.
That's generally a bad thing. You don't want,
I think so.
Yeah, you don't want like $1.5 trillion in the economy just sitting in banks because they're afraid to lend it out. Yeah. Or
because there's been some regulation that says, if you want to be eligible for help during a downturn, you have to keep this much on hand. And to the extent the Federal Reserve is basically making this system work by loaning out money that then has to be paid back with interest, I don't think that's a bad thing. The one thing I would say though is it does and I haven't really thought this through, but I think one would probably have to think about, well, at what point do you have public banking then, And at what point do you say, well, maybe we should have public banks that can compete with private banks. And at one point in the early history of the United States, there was a public bank, the Bank of the United States that Andrew Jackson famously made his enemy. But I know somebody in the chat is saying Bossi is defending bailouts here. I think that's very different from a loan. A bailout, again, you can quibble on the policy, whether it's a good idea to prop up entities with loans, but I think that's functionally different than a bailout that has to be paid back with interest.
Yeah, what I didn't actually realize this is one of the things I'm actually most ashamed of. For the longest time, I didn't know that the 2008 financial bailout was a loan.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I didn't either until
I didn't know. I didn't realize they paid it all back with interest. Now, of course, 2008 was a product of criminal levels of irresponsibility on the part of the business owners. So I'm not saying their behavior is justified there. I'm just saying I do think there's like it's a
there's a difference between
yeah.
a straight cash bonus and money that has to be paid back.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how much interest was paid, but and this included not just the bank bailouts, but the General Motors bailout.
Right.
Which again, I shouldn't be calling them bailouts because
the loan,
that's different than a loan.
But it's kind of a bailout. I just don't think. I thought bailout just meant a flat check, just like, oh, whoops, we need to keep you afloat.
And
but I didn't know.
That's why I brought up public banking. There is something to be said about the notion of, okay, well, General Motors can get this loan, but what about my bakery down the street? Can I get this loan? Yeah. Well, with the new Paycheck Protection Program, basically the answer to that question is finally yes. And somebody in the chat saying the interest is extraordinarily low.
But they still pay. I don't know. But I thought they just gave them the money. So even like a relatively low, like I wouldn't expect them to pay like 10% interest on a $800 billion bill. Like that seems a little punitive. I have a question.
But it is worth nevertheless asking, okay, so why is it then that not all businesses can get this? Why is it only that large critical sectors can get this? Because it is still, knowing that that's a possibility is itself a kind of subsidy that should be corrected, because that is a fundamental advantage that a large business has over a small business. And while I think it's better to correct it and then try and fix it after the fact, I also acknowledge then to let the economy fail. Like, for example, I think it would have been better to quote unquote bail out with a loan the Lehman Brothers bank that started the chain of failures that is alleged to have started the chain of failures and disasters in 2008. I think that would have been the better policy, as distasteful as it would be. But, I think it does raise questions about, if we're doing this, like if we're always doing this, then is this not something that people can come to depend on at a certain level of size? And so those are questions that need to be addressed. At the moment aren't.
I'm curious what your answer would be to this, because I don't like, as I said earlier, I don't really like the government taking over problems. I don't trust the government. I think that in some instances it's very helpful to have like the government on your side, but for the most part, I think they have their ulterior interests that take precedent over serving the people. But with regards to the coronavirus situation, let's dispense, I think, with the particulars and the nuance and just speak broadly of ethics. Would you be okay with, in times of crisis such as this, certain supply lines being temporarily seized by the government to try and implement a nationwide ration? Like they take over and pay for like this meat chain, these agricultural outlets here, this district, just take it over like USPS and try to, off the taxpayer's dime, kind of compensate for what a lot of people are doing right now with takeout and Uber Eats,
Yeah, I think that is something that the government should have in reserve, but I also think that it's probably typically unnecessary. Like it just depends on what's going on, I guess. Like I guess the maximum of what you can imagine the U.S. federal government doing is what it did in World War II, right? Where companies that refused to cooperate in the war effort, and most companies I think did cooperate, but there's a famous photo of the CEO of the Woolworths Corporation being hauled out by the police because he refused to cooperate. So, look, I one of the areas where I think I also depart from a libertarian is, I know that Adam Kokesh at the beginning of your discussion with him said, capitalism, doesn't the state really go after, or doesn't the state impinge on capitalism? Couldn't capitalism work on its own? And ultimately, I don't think there is any capitalism without a state. I don't think that's really possible.
Agreed.
Now, I also don't think that socialism is
No,
possible.
no. Just cut it off at the end of the first statement. We don't need to.
I don't think these systems are possible. I will say I specifically think capitalism depends on a state. And even Friedrich Hayek, who Ryan was kind enough to put in his intro, said the state, in the final analysis after a career of picking on states, the state is the most noble institution of them all, because without it, all the other institutions that we value are not possible. So I'm not for eliminating the state. And I think its power in times of emergency helps justify its fundamental existence.
So you're not against, in principle, heavy action being taken like that?
With
good justification. World War II was a pretty good justification.
Yes, but there are things though that I think I would want to think about, like whether a lot of that was necessary. I think in World War II probably was, but I also think that there are some lines I personally would never cross, like conscription, for example. I know that's not what we're talking about,
I'd agree
but I think conscription is such a fundamental violation of your freedom, your individual freedom, that it should never really be considered. If the state, if we can't rally enough people to voluntarily defend the United States of America, then something else has probably gone horribly wrong anyway. But in that situation you described, though. Well,
what'd you say, Ryan?
I'll answer your question.
I was going to say, how are we going to take out those dirty communists in Vietnam? But
yes.
That probably made it worse, because it turned the war into a domestic. So even if you agreed with the goals of the Vietnam War, that probably did not help.
Yeah, you don't want. They literally had a practice of killing their officers back there if they didn't like them, because resentful college boys from the States would go over there and then they get kicked to shit by their fucking superior officers. So somebody tosses a grenade in the latrine while their captain's off. This was like a common practice back then. It just creates a lot of fucking division and social chaos. Not a good thing.
It's not. Well, look, it's one thing if you're volunteering. I think there's a fundamentally different set of interests than if you are, because anyway, we get I think we're all on the same side. Conscription, not good. But in terms of your original question, though, I guess I feel like the coronavirus has probably shown that a lot of that would be unnecessary. Like, most of the food is available on the shelves now. There have been some shortages, but I think that in other places, like maybe masks and ventilators, that, for whatever reason, because a lot of the stuff we were importing from abroad and we didn't have much of a stockpile. Right. I would prefer that we build up stockpiles so that when we have
would be nice. Yeah, if we
in emergency situations, I'm not going to say. Yeah, the reason though that I'm so hesitant is that I know that after World War II, this impetus for central planning didn't disappear. And a lot of this idea of organizing industry, making it more efficient from the top down, which I generally don't agree with. A lot of that held over. The United States government really only let go of that idea of being able to tinker with industry after the failure of Richard Nixon's wage and price controls. So
I'm not that familiar with that little chunk of history.
Just in the 70s, President Nixon, to deal with rampant inflation, instituted a 90-day freeze on wages and prices. And that kind of economic control, and he was authorized to do this by Congress. So it's not a power that President Trump has, but he was authorized to do this by Congress. But that kind of interference in like everyday economic life, to me, is not just a huge interference with individual freedom, but I tend to think it's hugely inefficient.
So you would not be in favor then of a complete payment freeze in this country. So no one pays rent, no one pays mortgage, nobody pays anything, no long-standing payments are paid, complete freeze for a given length of time, everything back to normal afterwards. Because we do, from what I've read, because I think this is, it sounds so crazy, like what if everyone just stopped paying? But I read into it, and apparently it's actually a legitimate thing governments can do, which is wild to me. And from what I've heard about it, it seems like, because everyone lives, it's like the joke, right? Everyone lives paycheck to paycheck. We live paycheck to paycheck. Our fucking landlords need every month's rent payment because they have to pay mortgage, and the mortgage company has their own investments, and they need to keep getting payments every month so they can pay back the banks, and the banks need the money every month so they can. So if we just we need to just stop. We need to just stop for a second. Like everyone needs to hold their shit for a second,
Yeah. Yeah, there might, in an emergency situation, there might be something to that. I think that was the intention, basically. Like I think that was the $1,200 a month that was rolled out was meant to be the less coercive form of doing that. But of course, that was riddled with all kinds of problems. It's means tested.
Yeah, Bell Grant Fund. Yeah, you just have to be a black person who's worked in a cell phone business in 3 years in an underprivileged community.
Well,
you get your $1,200. Yeah.
I don't mean like that. I'm talking about the program to give out $1,200 that was passed.
No, I know. I'm just making fun of means testing.
That was like the Kamala Harris.
Yeah. The
testing
1,200.
Idea, right?
The 1,200 to me is woefully inadequate. Woefully inadequate. It's like an embarrassment in my mind.
And the fact that it's like, even if it were not quite enough, if it were dependable, at least if you knew when it was going to be rolled out. But it's been another example of just like bad government. Like, this is good policy, I think. Maybe there should be more, the amount should be higher. But I think this is a good policy idea to meet basically what you just described, that problem, which to deal with that in a way that right now the federal government, in order to take on that power again, that would be, I don't think we're even there yet for the federal government to be able to say, all right, we're going to control all the prices and wages and fees and things again. But it got around that by sending out checks. I think that's good policy. But the reason, and this is again why I think elections matter, right? Mm-hmm. Like, President Trump is not capable of exercising even good policy. Even when he's got the right idea, the implementation is poor. And it's Steven Mnuchin.
Maybe Orange Man,
those folks in charge,
actually is bad. It's possible.
Well, there's an interesting term that I think Tyler Cowen he came up with, which is like state capacity libertarian. And that is to say, even if you're a libertarian, you should want your state to be able to do the things it sets out to do. So like, even if you don't like government, you should hope that when the government sets out a goal, it can, within reason.
No. I completely agree. Yeah, just because you hate a system doesn't mean you still want to not optimize that system.
Right.
I don't like private business, but if somebody's going to try and roll out some like provision or regulation that would help average workers within the context of that system, I'll still try to work. Like, I feel a lot of people like set their thresholds for meaningful change beginning at the system they want to live in and nothing below it. They're not willing to contend with the world as it is. It's very frustrating. I said this to Joshua Collins just earlier today, but Ilhan Omar's daughter, who I imagine is pretty distraught over Bernie's loss, said this is why young people should never participate in electoral politics ever again. And with all due respect, that is so fucking stupid. That's such a toxic precedent.
I don't really get it. Like, I imagine there are all kinds of reasons why young people don't vote, and it would be good to make it easier, I think, for everybody to vote. But I don't understand. Like, I can understand the argument of we need to do more than electoralism, and I think that's absolutely true. Like, I think government. I know you were saying earlier. I don't think you'd probably stand by this point, actually. That voting is the only way we primarily deal with government. Maybe for most people that is, but it should be more than that. Right.
Yes. I want people to be involved in their
right.
Yeah.
But I don't know why anybody would reject using electoralism to the extent it was available. The only time that makes sense to me is if you're in a situation like, I guess, Russia, where the election is basically rigged. Otherwise, though, I mean, if you've got some hope of a fair election, I don't understand the value in rejecting it.
The only argument that I could hear on this is if in some way respecting the legitimacy of the electoral process harmed you. Like a lot of lefties believe this. I disagree because we don't control the media, which means we don't control the narrative, not even close. No. But they seem to believe that if we all don't vote, because we're disgusted with Biden, and sure, I don't like Biden, that if we all don't vote, everyone will wake up and go, oh my God, we weren't left enough. We weren't able to appeal to the interests of the leftists. Next time we'll do better. As opposed to what would actually happen, which would be everyone on earth blaming us for Trump round 2. Everyone, which mind you, they're going to do anyway, but they'll do it much worse if we actually don't participate. So to me, like, that's not even a valid argument. If I was put up with Hitler versus Hitler, but also he supports like a small like business loans to like poor
Sure.
communities. I would vote for the latter. I would campaign for the latter. You know, I would go out there. I'd wear the T-shirt and the armband, and I'd get the mustache. Absolutely, because it's
I get you though. I get you though.
Yeah, within the
to
tiny-
extent that's a real option that
Yeah.
you really can make some improvement with electoral politics. Doesn't mean you have to stop there. It doesn't mean you should stop there. But I mean, it's something. It's better
Yeah,
than
it's,
better
like
than nothing.
why not? Like I can still do other things. It doesn't hurt my
Right.
ability. I'm not saying I would dedicate 40 hours a week to doing it and cut into my other time. I'm just
Yeah.
saying like if like that, like why not?
Although,
right?
have you ever done canvassing?
Yes, I
Like,
have.
it is
Grueling.
and it's grueling. I did it in 2018 and it's grueling. It's hot. 9 out of 10 people do not want to talk to you and will either not be home or pretend not to be home. And then occasionally the ones who do want to talk to you, it's not much fun. But there are also though people who are great to talk to, and it can be really rewarding. But it's one of those experiences that's like, this isn't easy.
It is suffering.
It's hard. Yeah.
I canvassed with a lot of organizations back in college, but there was one I'll never forget it. Okay, this is this is totally not relevant, but
Sure.
we would go out to different towns. This was back when I was in Los Angeles. We would go door to door, and it was something about bees. I forget. It was like we were trying to save the bees. So I'm sorry.
was
That was the first one. This was fracking. Sorry, I
Oh,
know. Yeah, relevant. I know. We're of course anti-fracking. Obviously, no one's going door to door pro-fracking. And I was driven down to Long Beach in this tiny little car. 6 of us. We're reciting like the script we have to read out. We're all having a great time, sweating our asses off. I get there and I go door to door. I'm trying to live my life. I get to this one guy. I'm trying to explain to him, and I'm like, "Hey, well, you shouldn't do it for this, this, and this." Look, and he was like, "What are you, fucking Chinese? What, you want China to decide? What, you just give up the whole country to China or something?" And this guy, and I'm like, I can still do this. I try to argue with this guy, and I have the most grueling fucking 15-minute like slug out with this
Oh my God.
fucking guy's
Well,
rhetoric.
actually, the groundwater is very important. And
Yeah, it's like, please, sir, please, I'm not from China. I'm actually an American citizen. And oh my God, it was so demoralizing. I quit that day. I was 40 minutes out of town. It took me 2 hours to like walk to the train station and then get back home. It was so fucking bad.
Yeah, that's demoralizing.
I stuck it
remember
out better in the other canvassing jobs, but that one was really, really bad.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I can't say I've had an experience like that, but I know what you mean. It's it's like politics outside of voting is like a lot of work, right? So I think that may play some element into it. Like if there's a choice between feeling morally consistent and satisfied and not really having to do much, and feeling morally somewhat ambiguous and having to engage, and that can be a challenging choice, I think.
I just like to think that sometimes thinking about historical parallels makes me feel better about stuff we have to do today. I know that you're probably not as anti-Biden as me, almost like, but
No.
almost, yeah, probably by definition.
He
no.
wasn't my
But,
first choice, but he was my third choice.
Warren Buttigieg. Who was your?
I liked Andrew Yang. Yang.
Right, okay.
He was my he was enough reform to be I liked the reform, but I also liked that basically he was wanted to maintain capitalism.
Yeah.
But-
Sorry.
And then I liked Pete Buttigieg, and then I guess after that I liked Joe Biden of the people who were left at that point.
Yeah, like the pachinko machine, the ball falls down. Eventually, it lands in the cup.
Yep.
With regards to like voting for Biden or like any of these other like lesser of two evil situations, there have probably throughout history been literally like billions of really good, morally upstanding people who were only able to do good for the world by choosing the lesser of two evils. That every option presented to them was one which led to unfortunate outcomes, but they had to make the hard choice. And I think it's
That's
kind
kinda
of
interesting, yeah.
disrespectful to like the history of all of the people who have had to tough it out in hard moral times to suggest that we're above participating in that like dichotomy.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And the thing I always think of is there's this great documentary about the Eastern Front World War II called Soviet Storm. And at one point, they talked with these Russians who lived in Belarus, or not Russians, but Belarusians and Ukrainians who lived in the Western USSR. And there were a lot of people there. There was some like at that particular point in history, your choices are pretty fucking miserable, especially as the war drags on and you're basically dealing with, one murderous master or another. But there were people who made the difficult choice of, well, look, the Soviet Union is a pretty miserable fucking state, but these other people are trying to exterminate us. So we have to, that's our choice, And that's like, I can't think of a more difficult moral choice than that, right? But like Stalin or Hitler, right? But that's, when you're left with that choice, like that's kind of the choice you described earlier, but that's nevertheless a choice where it's pretty clear which one, under which system you've at least got a chance. So,
if you were like a Polish official after Russia began to push back towards, towards Nazi Germany, if that person's like, well, I don't like Stalin and I don't like Hitler, so I'm just not going to do anything, I would not consider that an act of moral courage.
No. And it's like, it's just, anyway, so you get the point. It's just, it's, I think you're absolutely right that it's easy to feel that way, but it's just not, it's not real. And it does in a way, I haven't thought about this before, but I think your point is well taken, that it really does kind of devalue the choices made by the difficult choices made by a lot of people in history. Like
there was somebody in chat who said, what if participating in the lesser of two evils nonsense, what if that eventually leads to worse outcomes, like through the normalization of that tendency? Yeah. My only response to that would be, I think you should always pick the lesser of two evils and then do more. What the problem is when you accept lesser of two evils and then just accept that, But I'm not just going to vote for Biden and then delete my channel and never be a political agent again. You accept the lesser of two evils and then you work to improve it. It's capitulating to that system that's the issue. Somebody who would have voted for like Hillary Clinton over Bernie, Hillary Clinton over Trump, but then just wouldn't have done anything more past that. Like you have to do more. Like politics is hard, Wait,
it's true.
I have to say one thing. I
think I see this in the chat, actually.
No, actually, it's not that, but it might shortly thereafter be that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
I thought an hour had passed. It's been 2 hours and 10 minutes. I actually have a prior obligation soon. Okay. So, do we want to hit up with like a final meme and then?
Well, let me address the trans rights point, actually, if you don't mind.
Please, by all means.
So I believe in trans rights as kind of a fundamental reflection of individual liberty. I think that the laws that should be in place, ultimately, like to protect the rights of trans people, should be something analogous to the rights of people who, the protected status of people of different races or religions, sex discrimination in the workplace, something analogous to that. But yeah, I think it's to me, I think it's just a fundamental expression of individual freedom. I don't think anybody should be obligated, again, outside of situations where we've already done so, like in the workplace. I don't think anybody should be obligated to accept your identity if they don't want to, again, outside of situations like where we've done that in the workplace. But, obviously to me, that's a fundamental expression of the individual freedom to define yourself. So, and that goes, pretty far to me. I think I know that is in a way kind of a reductionistic, it's really kind of a simple take on it, but that's the way I understand it. So
they're waiting on bated breath. Thank you. We get a lot of contentious arguments on my channel. I think people are always made happy. They're always made happy when talking to somebody who doesn't hate all of them.
I really don't understand why, because it seems like there's a huge overlap between people who are anti-trans and anti-gay and then who are secretly, you know what I mean? I don't understand. It just seems like that kind of excessive hatred is like a reflection of the inability to resolve personal.
It's a big meme, but unironically, yeah. I think anyone who paid attention hard enough in high school probably encountered some people who basically lived the meme, and Nick, of course, Nick Fuentes being the big, I as always, I really appreciate talking to you.
For sure. Likewise.
Ryan, thank you for hosting this Bastiat. It is always good to know that I am actually still physiologically capable of having good faith conversations, and it's not all drowned in a miasma of blood and contention. Yeah.
Well,
But
you
wait,
know,
wait.
I mean, it is. I will say it can be a lot of fun to watch, Nazis get disassembled and somebody like Stefan Molyneux get disassembled. I mean, it really makes me cringe when I'm thinking, okay, I think I could make a pretty good argument for capitalism, and here this guy is really fucking it up bigly. As
Yeah,
our
well,
president would say,
what
so.
hurts me is that when I'm arguing with people like Adam Kokesh or Stefan Molyneux, I have to their policy prescriptions are so idiotic. I have to defend the current system because at least our system functions and wouldn't immediately collapse into a feudal state. Whereas everything they describe instant like if they did what they wanted, like the whole country would instantly like explode, would catch on fire. So I have to defend like, hey guys, maybe like liberal capitalism isn't that bad compared to this fucking guy, you know?
The one reason I know you gotta go, just the one reason I think it's important I think that I come to the positions I do is I recognize that there are some big to maintain individual freedom as I envision it, a lot of compromises are made. First of all, we have a state. Second of all, we recognize there are some things the state should do, including the social welfare state I keep talking about. So there's some big compromises necessary to make all this work, and I just don't think that you have an open green field. You wave your hand, you say, this is the land of libertarian freedom. And
This is called Freedom Land. The one law is that you're free. All right, go ahead, folks.
I think that there is something to the notion that government can get in the way, but I think absolutely government is also necessary for this thing to work. So.
Okay, wonderful. Just quickly, Vosh, why do you have the better hair over Bastiat?
What? What? No, wait, no, I'm taking the L on this one. I'm not.
No, yeah.
Oh, do I have to?
This is called Red Suit Disputes. Yes, this is called Red Suit Disputes.
All right,
okay,
fine.
We're not taking some fairness here. All right.
All right, there we go.
Vosh has the beard of a Union general in the Civil War.
There, because I can do this. Bastiat can do what Bastiat can do. I can do what I can do.
Holy moly! Damn, I never seen that. I would say this. I would concede the Union general beard. That's a beard that makes me want to march through Georgia. But I would say that I think I'm rocking the pompadour, as it were. So.
Oh no, it's very
different
good.
sides of the coin.
It's very good.
Wonderful.
Here, I fucking hate having my hair down. Hold on.
That is actually, I have longer hair as well, and that's one of the most frustrating things. Like, I enjoy the fact of having long hair, except when it's down, and that's kind of like what it like.
It's the point, yeah, exactly. I don't know how like women do this. Like they're all fucking socialized having long hair. It seems exhausting.
I know what you mean. Like when I don't, I'm running out of. I gotta go out and buy more of this style and hold stuff for my hair. But when I don't have it in, it's like I get a little of that too. So. All right. Well, it was great talking with you, Vosh.
No, likewise, please, both of you, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a phenomenal day. Please stay healthy. Bastiat, of course, anytime you'd like
likewise.
to talk. And Ryan, I hope things are going well with you. I'm glad to hear Australia is slightly less on fire than it was last time we spoke.
Well, it was flooding, and then now we're all inside. So it's
improvement.
you're going up and downs, and you're
getting
At
your
least
plagues.
we're not all going to die from coronavirus. So that's the positive.
Well, thanks as ever for organizing this, Ryan. And by the way, for anybody listening who is looking for a great YouTube editor, Ryan, Red Suit Ryan is top of the walk. So he's really good. And it turns out when you pay your YouTube editor, you can do some phenomenal work. So.
Yeah, and likewise, if I may plug as well, if any of you guys are interested in hearing some insightful neoliberal economic commentary and social commentary at that, unironically, Bastiat's arguments with some of the other folks, I saw your lecture fan, LCTR?
Yeah.
I
He's
saw that.
lawyer
Unironically, good stuff. Definitely
thank
worth
you. I
checking
appreciate that.
Yes. And everyone, my plug is to make sure to donate to riseup.com.au and make sure that we can help that people in domestic violence situations get the help that they need. So that's my other thing. So thank you.
On. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Of course. Have a wonderful day,
thank
both of
everyone.
you.
Take care.
Have a wonderful day. All right. Bye, everyone.
Nice. I think that was a really good conversation. I'm really happy with how I handled that. There you go. I'm just opening up the window. This was an unsettling amount of agreement Vosh had with the neolib. Yeah, well, I think it's important to assess disagreements on a point by point basis rather than just like putting people into camps and expecting that I have to disagree with everything they say, like because they're in a different camp. I think Bastiat's like a really good faith person. We disagree obviously on the ethics of like wage slavery, but yeah, he's a cool dude. You contrast that with the Rem convo, yeah. Oh, go to Senbi. Yeah, he's like an oil lawyer. No, I completely agree. Bastiat probably contributes a huge amount of harm to the world, but I don't think that like confronting him on that, on his job, on his livelihood, on his expertise is not only a great way for me to get wrecked because he absolutely knows more about the logistics and the legality of what he does than I do, but also like I don't think it brings about best outcome like imaginable, you know? I'm guessing no game stream. Did you say dono stream? Me too, bucko. I think I did really good there. I think I handled that super fucking good. One thing that I'm really, really concerned... No game stream. Dono stream. Get out of here. Unless you want to talk with me for a bit. One thing that I'm always really concerned about when I'm having conversations with people who are like liberal leaning, you know, or anyone who's like more center leaning, is I really want to come off as reasonable, you know, that matters most to me. It's really easy for me to come off as like passionate or aggressive, or like I can get like good gotchas if I really want to try to, but I don't think that brings about as good of an outcome as me showing that I'm capable of calmly relaying my ethical perspective. I think I did a really good job with that. You gotta, yeah, exactly, Seth. You gotta choose your tactics. What's a dono stream? A dono stream is when I read the donations that I got over the course of the 2-hour debate, so I don't betray you all. Flevier with the $2. This is the end to that weird furry convo you read yesterday. No need to read on stream, just have it. Duly noted, comrade. That was some wild ass shit. I'll take a look at this too. The Crimson Drummer with the $5. Moral realism just isn't pragmatic in the real world. I lack the education to make a concrete statement on that, but I guess I would personally agree. What happened to the text-to-speech donations? Those are a rare video game stream thing. Most of the time, text-to-speech would make me want to kill myself, okay? Sake Tanuki with the $5. Predictive power. True! Very true. You did it in, like, finger quotes. And Sake Tanuki with the unbelievably generous $20. Vosh, I love your content for pretty much everything. Shouldn't I change the title of the stream? Ugh. Fine, I'll change it to I love you. I love you. There, because it's true. I love everyone. TTS? TTS doesn't read donos that have already come in, you fucking idiots. Vosh, I love everything for pretty much everything, all your content for pretty much everything, but I wanted to know if you'd be willing to have a physicist on to talk about epistemics. And then with the additional unbelievably kind $20, thank you so fucking much, dude. I love math and science, and the process of math, even without epistemically defining units, is very well grounded and has vast predictive power. The main issue with that, Sake, is that even though I might find that interesting, literally nobody else will, because we're literally talking about, like, mathematical, like, metaphysics, right? Or something like that, or math epistemics, you know? I might be willing to have that conversation if you could email me information on it, but like, it's out of the wheelhouse of the actual, like, content that I have on stream. I know some of you guys would like it, but, like, I do politics. Like, I do have an obligation to maintain a certain level of consistency with the content that I produce. Email me information on it, though. I'm willing to take a look. Jess with the tier 1 sub. After Hunter and TJ, who do you think will be the next reactionary who will turn leftwards? Well, I don't know if I would consider him a reactionary, but I've been hoping I can have Chris Raygun on for a while. I feel like Chris Raygun would make for a really great conversation. I could only hope. But I don't know if Chris Raygun really knows much about me or cares much about me, so I don't know if there's going to be the same level of initial mutual investment as there was with TJ and Hunter Avalone, both of whom I had spoken to extensively prior. A Jew for you with the $5. Voosh, according to Mike from PA, no communist would ever vote for Biden, so yet another piece of evidence proving you're actually a neolib wearing red. I disagree with Mike from PA on that issue. A Jew for you with the $5. Bonus meme. Joshua from Congress was super hot, and you should vote for him. I have more to say, but I'll save that for the Chatterbait stream. Yes, Joshua Collins was very attractive. You know Joshua Collins is his name, right? Not Joshua from Congress. He's not in Congress yet. But so noted. Yes, he is very cute. Tommy1010 with the $2. Leave Bastiat alone. He's wholesome. Don't fall for his big hair tricks, okay? And Sake Tanuki with the $5. Also found your GF in a video game. True! Now those are some ripe milkers. Guys, are you ready? Are you ready for some art advice? Don't ever draw people like this. Don't do it. That's my art advice. Don't ever do it. Don't do it. Don't do this. You don't need to do it like this. Don't do it. It just looks bad. Don't do it. Don't. Don't do it. Don't make the ass face you and then the tits face you. Don't do it. Don't. Just my advice. Wait, actually. But it's hot and I need milkies? I don't know if I consider it attractive, but hold on, wait. Wait, hold on. Okay, wait. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Now, what you may notice is that this is an incredibly uncomfortable pose to hold. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Ow, that like gave me a headache somehow. Jesus. Ugh. Oy. With all due respect, Vosh, those shorts do nothing for your ass. I'm just trying to live, man. I just threw on the clean shorts for the stream, all right? Can I live? Is that okay with you? Do I have permission, sir, for me to live? Gayfesh with the $5. Do you feed Artemy wet or dry food? If dry food, you should look into a gravity feeder. If he can't self-regulate, you can take it away, but my cats do just fine. He can't self-regulate. Gayfesh, if we let him choose how much to eat, he would eat everything. Please trust me when I say this. We feed him both dry and wet food. We give him 3 meals. In the morning, dry and wet. In the night, dry and wet. And during the lunch, it's just dry. We'll be trying to feed him less soon, but all he cares about is eating. He's so hungry all the time. All he cares about. Mathonus with the $5. Hey Vosh, I normally don't watch the stream, but rather use TubeMate to download the stream into an audio file and listen to it on the go. Nothing wrong with that, as long as you make sure to click on the video file on YouTube at least once, so that it counts as a view. And then you can download it, okay? Just make sure I get that fucking view. 787 Captain with the $2. What do you think of the Juche ideology, Vosh? Yuche. The Yuche ideology. I generally don't like it. Wait. Mike Enoch and Eric Stryker on Modern Day Debate right now? Wait, Modern Day Debate was able to get Mike Enoch and Eric Stryker? Holy shit. Wait, hold on. I probably shouldn't be... Oh, with Caleb? Oh, shit. Holy shit, there's 1,500 people watching. Oh, no. Wait, how many people are here? Okay, there are 2 people on each team. There are 2 people on each team. On the anti-fascism side, we have a tanky, Caleb Malpin. I don't know who this person is. James apparently shaved his head for, I guess, the event. And then over here we have 2 highly trained, prominent neo-Nazis.
Me, Caleb. So let's do it in reverse. But I want one of us to have the last statement is what I'm saying, because they got the last opening statement. So started with one of them two.
I think that the advantage, though, generally, like, I mean, and there's even like empirical data on psychology, like the very first thing and the very last thing are the most memorable. So like, I think the advantage is usually like the very first 5 minute or whatever, however long statement, and then the very last statement.
I feel like Caleb should end it, because
Yeah, of course, that you would feel like that. But
well, no,
he ended it
because
on
I stepped all
opening
over him in
statement.
the 3-minute thing. But
But
you guys did get the first statement of the debate. One of us should get the last statement of the debate. And I would say that should be Caleb, not me, because I stepped all over Caleb earlier.
Let Caleb do it. He's just gonna repeat Comintern stuff from the 30s. Like it's not like it
Don't be a
matters.
dick.
Okay, so we'll go over to what we might as well, I think, keep the order then that we were going. So if we want to start with Mike, then go over to Brenton, then Eric, and then Caleb, and these will just be the last statements before Q&A.
So who's going?
Mike.
So we'll start with Mike, and this is as long or as short as you'd like it to be, but as long as it's not over 5 minutes.
5-minute final
I think
statement.
we've heard a lot of stuff, a lot of accusations hurled at Stryker and I, a lot of characterizations that we don't necessarily support, of course, in this format. Sometimes maybe
A lot of people spamming 14 in
some of the
chat.
more nuanced points of what we talk about. Accusing us of being fans of the British Empire. That to me is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Listen to Strike and Mike sometime.
Yeah, I mean, just
It's
actually
not a
listen to
dog
our
whistle,
show, you
it's
might
just
be
a number.
surprised, at the kinds of things that we talk about. The idea that perhaps some people are critical. There might be some intellectuals like critical of the Soviet
14 like 1488, 14 words. We must secure a future for white people in the white race or whatever.
to have said that Germany should have been crushed. No, but it is against the law to in any way attempt to rehabilitate Germany in Europe. I mean that's the facts. And in America, it's not against the law. Like you won't go to jail, but you might lose your career.
Wait,
you might lose.
Wait, holy shit! It's against the law to rehabilitate Germany. It's against the law to deny the Holocaust. Gotta love how he frames that. If you let a Nazi talk for 5 minutes, you'll listen to lies for 5 minutes. Rehabilitate Germany. David with the $2. Because you should have used the classic conservative argument against Rem. How can I be ableist? I'm autistic and I've got autistic friends. Yeah, well, if things had gotten even more bad faith, I probably would have gone down that route. They've been saying stupid shit the whole time. I think doing a react of the VOD later would be awesome. Yeah, maybe, but I think it would be funnier if I just ignored them forever. I know it bothers them. One shoe on. Vosh just calls everyone Nazis. Is that a meme? Mike Enoch and Eric Stryker are literally Nazis. They're literally Nazis. Like there's no threshold of Nazism they don't pass. They're Nazis. Please react to the VOD. This is going to be one of those things Nazis use to gish gallop people with. I don't give a fuck if the two... Okay, frankly speaking, okay, guys, Eric Stryker and Mike Enoch are literally two of the most prominent Nazis in all of the English-speaking world. They're incredibly prominent. And their debate, their big tag team debate, gets 1,500 views. A little bit more than what I get playing Resident Evil. I'm not too concerned about their prominence. The amount of attention that I get in my channel dwarfs theirs. I'm not going to legitimize them or give them the attention they crave. Do you know how much cringe posting people like Stryker and Enoch do? Like how much they want my fucking attention? I'm fine arguing with Nazis or whatever, but like the degree, the how pathetic they are. Like they're constantly like sending their little fans after me to bitch and moan that I'm like a coward for not giving them like time on my comparatively much larger platform, you know? I miss clout chasing 10k sub Vosh. Well, that's the great thing, folks. God, I talk about this every stream now. It makes me feel like such an entitled cunt, but this has been pretty fucking wild. Right now, at like current growth, like the 600 subs a day, I have never seen like growth like this before. This is fucking crazy. Are you kidding me? So right now I'm feeling pretty good about my general ability to sort of leverage my social capital, and I don't feel like I need to just acquiesce to every, like, yeah, like I'm getting like over 100,000 views every day. Like, where's Destiny's channel at? So like at this point I have to be like a little bit more like scrupulous when it comes to, yeah, at this point I'm almost getting as many video views every month than Destiny is. Destiny, like, holy shit, like he also posts like stream VODs like every day. If I can beat him out, like I'll be doing the same format as him, but with more views at less than half the total sub count. Rem made a video on you 30 minutes ago. Speaking of not platforming bad faith people, holy fuck. I've heard of Keith Woods, yeah. Rem the Bath Boy. A train outside is really pumping off. Discussion on Vosh debate. A bad faith ultimate skeptic. Hey, they got a good picture of me. Oh, okay. This is the stream VOD. How much longer will it be? Probably like 50 minutes. Must be the stream VOD from after he ran off. Actually, when I argued with him, when I argued with Rem, I was the one who like kicked, like I was the one who left the call, but I feel like I did it at like a comedically relevant time, you know? Same with Coach Red Pill. Like, I don't feel bad if I'm the one who leaves, if it's in the middle of like, you don't even want to listen, yeah, whatever, like that kind of stuff. Like, for me, it's more awkward if it just drags out, you know? That makes it more awkward for me. I don't know. Makes me cringe. Okay. David with the $2. To quote my main man, Bo, those who make a peaceful revolution impossible make a violent one inevitable. True! Can't have that conversation with these fucking libs. And David with the additional $2. Thank you, my man. I really appreciate the kindness. He literally said he was done a few seconds before you kicked him. Yeah. And Coach Red Pill kept saying he was about to leave, too. According to Destiny's logic, the abolition movement wasn't good because it was done by privileged white folks. Yeah, well, I don't think Destiny has a very principled, logical position when it comes to the validity of, like, populism, you know? So, I don't really know. It's pretty weird. I don't even know how to respond to it. Destiny thinks, like, it's LARPing to advocate for things that couldn't pass through Congress at the time you advocate for it, but, like, activism doesn't do much anyway, but when it does, it's just because of the policy maker. Like, I don't actually know. Whatever, it's really weird. Demosel with the $5. Pro wrestling. He does it against everyone too. He argued with Kemi Catboy, the Kemi Tora, whatever, the Nazi. Kemi Catboy. I don't know. He argued with that Nazi, the one who Nick Fuentes fucked the other day. And he was like, this is so boring. You couldn't even get your ethno-nationalism passed through Congress. You can't even talk about policies. Like he was arguing with a Nazi, and he was making fun of the Nazi for not having electorally viable policies, as if that's how Nazis came to power back during the 1930s in Germany. You know? It's like really weird. Like, I don't know. This is a really weird route to take. He really does only care about policy discussions. I don't get it. He even started like making arguments for the Nazi to show how bad the Nazi was at making ethical policy positions. I don't know. It was really strange. Oh shit, comrade. Okay, we gotta get through this. Dimacel with the $5. Pro wrestling organizations call their performers contract workers to get out of handling the medical cost of what they put them through. Yep, I saw that. I saw that on a fucking John Oliver episode. You're not slipping that one past me. Do you have a glossary of all the big philosophy and debate words you use? No, I don't. But none of the words I use require, like, any special education or anything. Okay, wow. Paul Resendes with the unbelievably generous $100 donation. You have been ridiculously kind today, my dude. You fucking popped off today's other stream as well. Holy shit. So Paul Resendes says, couldn't we keep private ownership and decentralized power and wealth with a 100% inheritance tax? While implementing a 100% inheritance tax would go a long way towards addressing power imbalances, there are still people who can rise to tremendous heights within their own lifetime. Like, to me, like, again, like, the fundamental unethicality of this is that the distinction between those who own capital and those who work for capital leads to an imbalance in our society that harms people and annuls our democracy. That isn't really addressed if we just reset the counter every time a person is born, you know what I mean? So you can't have generational wealth inequality. And even then, you would still kind of have generational wealth inequality, because even if you don't just get the money, you still benefit from certain sociological conditions that are inherent to wealth, like being in a really good neighborhood, or having a really good school district, or like getting really good tutors. Like, you could benefit from like a lot, you know what I mean? But yeah, like, fundamentally, the power imbalance isn't really something that can be addressed just through like policy that still preserves the nature of private ownership, in my personal opinion. Thank you so much for the kindness, comrade. I really do appreciate it. Vosh, my man, did I hear you say you supported puberty blockers for 9-year-olds the other day? I don't think so. I usually say like 12, like 11 or 12. That's usually the threshold I say, because that's right before most most people go through puberty. But if like a 9-year-old was like gonna hit puberty super fucking early, then maybe that could be fine. I don't know. It would depend on what the doctor decided was valid. Yeah, like if they have a really early puberty. I got a really early puberty, you know? Girls can start puberty at 9? Well, then yeah, sure. Yeah, whatever the doctor says is fine. Is there a negative to taking puberty blockers at 9? No more so than taking puberty blockers at 12. Cisgender children have been taking puberty blockers for longer and at earlier ages to correct hormonal imbalances. Reza Sutro with the 2 gifted tier 1 subs to NPC Porky and Comrade Mars. Thank you so much, Comrade. I really appreciate that. Red Eye Sam with the $2. Just want to say as a Floridian, he's correct on Florida. I know, Comrade. I know. I've been there. Rajan is back with the unbelievably kind $40. I'm so sorry for trolling, Vosh. Rajan, I let you fuck around for like 20 minutes before I finally banned you. But I have now unbanned you because you paid me $40. That's how the system works, baby. That's why capitalism bad. All right, there you go. The penance has been paid. I love you. Thank you for the incredibly kind donation. Should have gotten yourself a yellow name. Or maybe you wouldn't have known if you were going to be unbanned. No worries, Suda. One Shuan with a gifted tier 1 sub. The answer to white names is not to destroy them, but to redistribute the wealth to the lower classes. Hashtag orange for all. True. Vosh, I'd like to have a discussion with you. How do I call in? I'm afraid that we're not doing any discussions at the moment, comrade. All you have to do to get on call is to say something really fucking dumb in chat when I don't have anything else to do. But at the moment I do, which is to read these donations. Human Girl with the 5 Australian. Nice name, nice dono. Thank you. And Patrick Miller with the $2. Who's Tucker Carlson? JR late to chat, look cute, V? Who's Tucker Carlson Jr. late to chat? Who's Tucker Carlson Jr.? I'm late to chat. You look cute, Vosh. Thank you. Tucker Carlson Jr. is a Fox News commentator and a racist man, to say the least. He's got a lot on him, okay? That's the gist of it. Sean with the $5. Great job defending your positions in this debate. Bastiat is such good faith and super hot too. Yeah, I think that Bastiat legitimately acts in like the best possible faith. Which like I really respect. It's not easy to do that. David with the $2. I don't want to hear, well, how are we going to pay for it anymore when talking about Medicare for All and Charlie Kirk? And that's when the donation ended. Agreed, David. Thank you. Buggirl93 with the tier 1 sub. Ho mukate kuro nuka nigesu ni kono dio ni chikatsuiti kuru nuka. And then Jotaro says, Chikatsu kanakya teme obuchi no misenain dina. Nailed it. Human Girl with the 10 Australian dollars. Thank you. Love your content and debates. 10 question marks. From Beautiful Down Under. 10, 20 question marks. Thank you. I'm very happy to hear that you enjoy my content. I just don't like Australia very much. But it bears nothing on you, okay? I love you, just not Australia. Also, I can tell because you paid with Australian dollars. Thank you very much, comrade. I really appreciate it. Learning all the currencies of the world. Neon Nor with the £10. Thank you. That's really kind of you. The Fed is effectively controlled by private corporations. Yeah, that's... yeah, because like they're advised, but they're like appointed, but they're not elected. Yeah. It is very complicated. I want to learn more about it before I like can really feel confident making strong statements on it. You know, just another one of those like finicky little policy things I really want to learn up about. Pragmatic Culture with the $5. Just be Revolutionary Vanguard MLs already, you actual cucks. True, but not true. Just to clarify. Patrick Miller with the $5. Why do go so hard on Destiny but get along with ideological enemies? He's a nice dude and I get it, but still. Well, Destiny is every bit as much my ideological enemy as Bastiat. Would he not be? Bastiat and Destiny have pretty similar political positions. The reason I adopt different rhetorical tactics for different situations. Bastiat is super fucking good faith and he's really pleasant to talk to, so I try to do the same, come off reasonable, you know. But Destiny, in every fucking conversation we've had here, has been super fucking argumentative and like mean, bad faith. So I respond in kind. But if Destiny ever wanted to have like a good faith policy debate, like I would try to. I know, like, mean, I know it's like a childish thing to say, but like he kind of was, dude. Like I never try to come off being like mean to people unless I'm substantiating that meanness with like their disagreement with their policy, you know? Bastiat and Destiny are very different people. Ryko Nova with the $5. Vosh, that's legit sexy. I'm sad you don't like your hair down. Sorry. I'll try to do it more often, comrade. And David, my man, the additional $2. Hey, Vosh, I usually agree with you on your takes, but if we normalize voting for the lesser of two evils, that'll only make the lesser become greater. I disagree with that. I think voting, like doing the lesser of two evils is the only thing you can do, because otherwise you're just allowing the greater evil to win, and then you have to act outside that system to try to change the dichotomy. But like otherwise, I don't think the world is made better by just passively allowing the worst thing to happen if you could have chose a less bad thing, you know? The problem is being complacent with that lesser of two evils thing, which I'm not. It's just, if it's there, you have to, you know, go for it. Patrick Miller with the $5. I got where you're coming from. He seemed nice, just expected him to be a sock cocker. How are you responding to something that I responded to one of your donations with before I even responded to your donation? Sure, I guess you kind of predicted my response there, yeah. Dejero with the unbelievably kind $50 donation. Thank you so fucking much, comrade. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I was having a conversation with my friend earlier about the Labour Party corruption, and she brought up Jeremy Corbyn's anti-Semitism. What do you think about it? An investigation into the anti-Semitism of the Labour Party has found there's nothing worth investigating, and the leaks from the Labour Party corruption scandal showed that they deliberately exacerbated and failed to address accusations of anti-Semitism as a plot to undermine Jeremy Corbyn. That's what you have to say. That is the answer. There was never any substance to it. Never. It was always bullshit. And nothing has been found to substantiate this. There is no evidence that claims of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party are treated any differently to any other forms of bigotry. If you're treated with anti-Semitism or racism, the Labour Party will treat you the same. But the higher-ups in the Labour Party deliberately tried to sabotage that process to exacerbate a media narrative about JC. Yeah, they literally lied about how many anti-Semitism cases were being handled. What a fucking liar, dude! And so on. Thank you, Jejero. I really appreciate the incredibly kind donation. Aeon Windsor with the $2. Why didn't you make the argument for cooperatives you usually do with a higher likelihood of not covering up and propping up think tanks? Because we didn't really get to... Because that's an argument in favor, usually, of the belief that corporations would act in the better interest of society if they were democratically owned. And while I do believe that is the case sometimes, I didn't feel it was as strong of an argument as the other things we were focusing on, and it would have been more relevant if we had gone into the climate change thing. But we didn't, so I was a little easier on that point. I'm fairly happy with how I assigned like my arguments here. Andrew Harper, yellow name is the highest. It's tier 4. It's only for the biggest boys. Hal970FX, the $2. Oh, whoa. Oh, whoa. Andrew Harper with the $2. Great streams. Hope you can have Liv posting on soon. I know you're booked right now, though, but I'd love to see it someday. I could probably get Liv posting on, but I feel like we just argue about Bernie or bust or thirst posting. Because Liv is one of the reasons why I can't scroll through my Twitter feed on stream, okay? That's all I'm saying. Posadas John with the $2. Jesus. Posadas John with the $2. You're our Union General, and we will play this into battle. Copyright?
Oh, way down south in the land of traders, rattlesnakes and alligators right.
That's all I can play. That's all I can play. It's gonna be copyright striked either way. That's all I can play. Thank you, I love you. True. True. Andrew Harper with the $2. I made this for you, Daddy. What? I look so stupid. Oh shit. My dude. I look so fucking dumb. I've always had nice legs. Here we go. This is the last Coomer posting thing we'll do today, okay? I've always felt like I have really nice legs. That's what I always felt. Here, can we... Anyway, let's... How far can we go? Yeah, here we go. There. I feel like I've always had pretty nice legs, you know? They're like a nice... My humble opinion. What the fuck are you doing? Whatever I want on my stream. Capitalism SX with the $5 was going to call Bastiat Bastiat, but I can't because he worked for oil companies. By the way, Juch is pronounced Hoochie. It is not pronounced Hoochie, but maybe I'll try to remember that for the future, huh? Patrick Miller with the $2. Thoughts on Hitchens? Cringe, right? Am I thinking of the right person? Christopher Hitchens? Christopher Hitchens is cringe, right? Or am I thinking of somebody else? Cringe? She's pretty cringe, right? A little bit cringe. Yeah, probably pretty cringe. That's my answer. Derek IT Pro with the $5. I tried looking this up on YouTube and couldn't find it anyway. Have you played either The Outer Worlds or Disco Elysium? Love your input on them. I haven't played Disco Elysium. I played a little bit of The Outer Worlds. I found its story fun to bant about with, but it's not a type of game I enjoy very much. Certainly not for stream. LJest with the 666. Are you in favor of commodity money, representative money, or fiat money? Just learned about these. Haven't heard any leftists talk about pro-con at all. Nor will you today, because I don't know the differences enough for me to be able to give a good argument on stream. Whoop! Sorry. I'll try to learn in the future. And Paul Resendez with the unbelievably kind $50 donation. That's like 300 in total today. What the fuck's up with you, dude? You're so fucking generous, dude. Why should only workplaces be democratic? Should schools and grades be decided democratically? Family structures as well? Well, I would argue that a school or any kind of educational outlet is an example of a just hierarchy. The relationship between a student and a teacher is one where I think the teacher should have a degree of authority over the student. So I don't think democracy is what we need here. Now, are there things we can do to improve the schooling system? Absolutely, yes. But I think that fundamentally, I don't think schooling would be improved by making the students and the teachers like on par with regards to how the institution is run. That to me would not be a fix. As with family structures, I do want family structures to be more democratic. I don't like the nuclear family. I like communal family raising. Vosh, I went to a democratic school, it was based. Maybe there is a good argument there. I don't know. I'd have to look. I do want teachers to have democratic control of the school, though. Many teachers are very competent. It's just the school boards that fucking suck. So maybe there is a good argument for democratically run schools, but amongst the teachers, not amongst the students. Or maybe, Nino. Okay, I don't know. Maybe there are arguments to be had here. I don't know. But as for family structures, I do want to mitigate the hierarchy of a family structure. Though obviously a 2-year-old should be subservient to an adult for fairly obvious reasons. Do you want a 2-year-old to decide what they eat every day? No, of course not. We have to exercise some degree of control there, you know? That's my argument. Man, you guys keep donating, like, as fast as I can read them. Oh, shit. Please stop. Hypermode Art with the $5. Vosh, I'm sorry for not just letting you live. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. Your shorts are just fine. Thank you, comrade, for ameliorating your earlier crime. David with the $2. I love how the alt-right claims that immigrants are trying to replace them when Hitler literally planned to colonize Eastern Europe and replace the natives. Yeah, well, you know, they like to engage in a lot of projection. They're the ones who say, like, we have to do a white ethno-state, because if we don't, they'll do a black ethno-state. Like, it's all projection, you know? Anything to justify. Sake Tanuki with the unbelievably kind $20. 1 second is 9,192,631,772 cycles of the radiation produced by the transition between two levels of the cesium-133 atom. Yeah, duh. Yeah, obviously. What kind of fucking idiot doesn't know that? Duh. And then with the additional $5, sorry, 9,192,631,700. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for correcting cycles. Yeah, my bad. Okay, sorry, I misread your typo, Sake Tanuki. My apologies. I knew the right answer. I was testing you, okay? I knew the right answer. Thank you. And that's true. I mean, that is an objective definition, you know? Or is it? Root of all Grievals, the tier 1 sub. Unwhitening, my name is Praxis. I'm joining the Shahid Buttar campaign in San Francisco to unseat Nancy Pelosi. If I could get Shahid to come on, would you be down? Shahid Buttar? Are you kidding me? That would be the biggest politician I could get on yet. Wait. Ballotpedia. Shahid Butter. That's how you pronounce it. Wait, isn't the primary already done? Wait, are they still running? Wait, the primary's done. Wait, the primary ended on March 3rd. And Nancy Pelosi won. Yeah, Shahid got enough votes? No, it isn't? Wait, I'm confused. What am I looking at right now? The following candidates ran in the primary for U.S. House California District 12 on March 3rd, 2020. Nancy Pelosi wiped the floor with him. What am I missing here? Oh, it's going to be a jungle primary? They're going to be in the general? Okay, gotcha. Well, I doubt that Buttar is going to win, but, you know. Top 2 runoff? Okay, gotcha. All right. It'd still be really nice to have him on. One shoe on with the gifted tier 1 sub. Chat, just want to clarify, I was memeing with the calls everyone Nazis bit. Big ass moment. No worries, comrade. I'm fucking autismo too. Forge with the $5. Private property is a spook. True! And Sir Doug with the $5. Hey Vosh, I'm new to taxes and Patreon. Patreon is telling me to update my W8BEN form. Do you have any advice from someone who's never paid tax before? Nope! I only know how to do my own forms. I only know how to file 1099s, my dude. Or how to get like 1099s to file my 40. Okay, that's all I know. I filed taxes for the first time in my life a few months ago, and it was entirely like my personal employment, you know? So what I strongly recommend is that you find an attorney in your area to meet. Big Dick Energy with the $10. Thank you. Thank you for the good streams. I think you should debate with some leftists on stream about Bernie or bust. I think it's really getting out of hand. Yeah, I agree, but I feel like I talk about Bernie or bust like every day. I'm so tired about it. I'm just happy it didn't come up in my conversation with Joshua Collins. I've done it so many times now. Maybe I should just wait a little while. I want to wait until after the Democratic Convention. I want to wait until after Milwaukee. Then we can talk. Jay Lee with the $2. I am a neoliberal. Disagree with Vosh, but good night. Okay. All right. Thanks. Sake Tanuki with the $5. Despite being ultimately epistemically unjustifiable, physics and math are very internally consistent and can still be used to unbelievable efficacy. And with the additional $5, the meter is defined as the length of the path traveled by light in a vacuum in 1/299,792,458th of a second. And with the additional $5, oh shit, I'm getting schooled here. And yes, if string theory is correct, then we do have 13 dimensions. Ah, yes, of course. Yes, obviously. We can still predict outcomes unbelievably accurately and consistently with math. Okay, so what you're arguing What you're arguing is that there are certain mathematical truths that continue to exist outside of like moral claims. That's fine. I only call myself like a moral anti-realist, not really like a ultimate skeptic. Like I acknowledge my understanding of skepticism is fairly limited and that I'm not like a philosophy student or anything like that. But yeah, like I wouldn't, my only argument is that like fundamentally moral, the way I understand it, the argument that people like Rem make, like moral realists, is that you can argue moral facts exist in the universe because we can argue that there are empirical decisions and facts that we can verify, and those empirical verifications are downstream moral arguments. For example, if we agree on the definition of truth to mean something which is empirically verifiable, we have already engaged in a moral presupposition. But once having done so, we have to use that moral presupposition in order to validate truth claims about empirical reality, meaning that those empirical reality claims are themselves moral claims because they are downstream, they are subservient to, they are subject to a moral claim. But my argument would be that's fucking dumb. Just because an empirical claim can be made downstream a moral claim doesn't necessarily mean that empirical claim is itself a moral claim. I don't think that the moral claim is a transient property that like falls down infinite tiers below. For example, I would make the argument that as a moral anti-realist, I can make the statement, I think it is wrong to rape people. And then I could say the following empirical statement: it would be good if you did not rape people. That's an empirical claim with regard to the broader moral statement that I made. But I don't think that makes the second claim itself moral. I think it's empirical in the context of a framework. But doesn't downstream imply it's a dependent claim? Yeah, but I don't think that necessarily means that just because an empirical claim is dependent on a moral claim, that means that the empirical claim has to be a moral claim. Because it wouldn't happen the other way around. Just because a moral claim is based off an empirical claim doesn't mean then that the moral claim becomes an empirical claim. I don't think the transient property of morality in epistemics like transfers like to the levels below it. I think it just operates. The definition exists only on its own tier. You know. Oh, not gonna lie, morality of ethics makes me snooze. Yeah, I agree. Meta-ethics. Yeah, wow, so boring. I get it. Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Jesus. Using layman's rhetoric in this situation makes it really confusing. Sorry, fine, sorry, my bad. I'm just a social science major. I'm just trying to navigate the difficult questions that are thrown my way by people more educated than me. I'm trying my best. I'm so sorry. My apologies. Jatsko with the $5. Thoughts on voting green for president but blue down the rest of the ballot to get third-party funding and hamstring Trump's second term with all blue Congress? I still would want Biden over Trump. I don't care about third-party funding. I think third parties are useless. I still want Biden in the presidency over Trump. Also, with executive actions being as popular as they are today, I don't know how much a blue Congress is going to help. Mug with the very kind $10. Do you think you should talk about the surge in hate crimes against Asian Americans sometime? Yeah, I did, didn't I? Didn't I do a video about that with Paul Joseph Watson, like a while back? About how the coronavirus shit was leading to a lot of people being fucking racist against Chinese people? I never released that video, did I? I recorded it, but I never released it because I wasn't satisfied with his quality. Huh. Yeah, maybe I should talk about it. Sake Tanuki with the $5. Oh, and would you ever engage in a consequentialist framework to challenge his assertions, like asking what has happened in investment banking since 2008? Yeah, but I know what would happen then. If I asked Bastiat, like, whoa, what's happened to those systems since 2008? All he would have to say is like, not enough regulation has been done. Like, I don't think that really answers the question. Bastiat will agree that there are like elements of capitalism that are harmful, but what I need to convince him is that it is capitalism that is harmful. And I didn't really like want to run through like a bunch of like gotcha attempts, you know? Christian Fox with the $10. Have you played any of the Warriors games, like the main series or Hyrule or Fire Emblem Warriors? No, I have not. They all look like incredibly like grindy, beat 'em up nonsense to me. Devin Harrison with the very kind $10. How would you suggest one should engage with people in your life who you want to pull them to your political leanings, but you don't want to be too pushy? All you can really do is be out and proud with your political leanings around them, and at some points when you think it's prescient, tell them you politely disagree with their opinions on certain issues, and then tell them you want to have those conversations with them if it's something they're interested in having. That's the only thing you can really, really do. Have I considered pursuing a master's degree in sociology? Nah, wouldn't really do any more good for the world than what I can do here. Sake Tanuki with the $20. I feel bad. Thank you. Even Biden doesn't want you to vote for him, so at best you're riding in Biden's RN minivan and you're voting for his medical staff and handlers? Yeah, sure. Biden would still appoint better cabinet positions than Trump would, so I'd still agree with putting Biden in office. I'm never going to change my mind by, like, arguments that Biden is pathetic. The argument would need to be that Biden is worse than Trump, which he isn't, so... But of course he's pathetic. Trump is pathetic. Have you guys seen how Trump behaves? He's like a fucking child. He's our president, and he's a fucking child. Ignacio Cabero with the $2. Have you heard of General Strike 2020, genstrike.org? Yep, I talked about it with Joshua Collins earlier today. Joe Biden with the $5. Hey, Jack, what's this newfangled art they're calling hentai? It's got some pretty good stuff. Also, what's lolicon? Lolicon is a genre of animated pornography where the girls have the hair that smells the nicest. You would like it, Joe Biden. Good luck. I believe in you. All right? Turn your safe content filter off, okay? Official Mela with the $2. Islam is right about women? Haha, based. Ooh, true. And if by right about women you mean the particular variant of Islam practiced by a friend that I had in college, which led to the woman who I knew being an incredibly self-actualized and independent person who was incredibly intelligent, engaged, and educated. That's what Islam is right about. Whatever produced her, whatever form of Islam produced her, that's some good-ass shit. You guys can't keep clipping me. The joke was that I led into like a good statement. You can't keep clipping me when I'm saying good things. It's not the joke. Okay. Shackley with the $5. Play the Gecko Koju Daimo mod for Warband. Sure, I will definitely do that, comrade. Thank you very much. Kamiso with the $5. Where are your vagina bones? You need to... Okay, ask... Hyena has a funny story about that, so you need to ask her about that, okay? Peter is Yum with the unbelievably kind Tier 4 subscription. Thank you, comrade. Love you, dude. I'm a dentist. What is your take on providing cosmetic dental services publicly available? You mean like making them like a part of like Medicare or Medicaid, like just making them like a universally available? I think you could make decent arguments for that, in large part because the most expensive... What do we mean by cosmetic? Getting people a fake rack of teeth can go like a really long way towards increasing their ability to like socialize and get like good work and stuff. It might end up being that actually like helps in the long run. But I don't know what you mean by like making it publicly available. I'm in favor of like decommodifying medical care, so my answer would be yes, of course. Yeah, braces count as cosmetics. Everything counts as cosmetics for fucking dental work. So I don't know, but I would almost certainly like to say yeah. Aurora with the $2. No Chris Hedges, Abby Martin. What? What? And Peter Joseph is? No, I don't think I know who any of those people are. Patrick Miller with the $2. You've been very hurtful today, Daddy. Be nice to Destiny. I'll try my best. Nino with the gifted tier 1 sub. I'll likely be taking my first dose of hormones today, celebrating by spreading the Dick's Hypers time to become a Chad. Nice, Nino! Congratulations, nice. Good luck with your upcoming substantial physiological changes. I wish the best of luck to you. Bernie Sandinista with the $5. Is it racist to want to be a Confederate soldier or a Nazi soldier in a war reenactment? I don't think so, right? When I played, like, World of Tanks, I think I played as the Germans just because I thought their tanks looked the coolest. I mean, that's just, like, fun, right? Only if you're, like, doing it for, like, some weird ulterior reason, you know? Which I hope you're not. Wow Nacro with the very, very kind $10. Hi Vosh, first time donating. I talked to you in an AMA months ago, and since then I've watched more of your content. I really like what you're doing on YouTube. Keep it up, comrade. Thank you. That's really kind of you. I really like what I'm doing too. What a coinky dink. Seriously though, thank you. I really, really appreciate that. And welcome. Pasta Frola with the 100 Rs. ARS? I do not know what currency that is. I'd love it if you debated a TERF, but a lesbian cis TERF, not like the dude from last time. I found your channel last week and binge-watched most of your videos. Love your content. Keep it up. Yeah, I tried to with fucking Ariel Scarcella, but that cunt bitched out. Fucking ran off to the debate with Destiny, where he didn't go that hard on her, but then later had to have like TERF dog whistles explained to him by a trans woman. I'll try to find another one. We'll do an anti-TERF arc soon, okay? Thank you, comrade. I love you. Sake Tanuki with the $5. My dude, you've been so kind. I only mention math and science because I've been binging Young Earth Clowns versus science debates, and they make science look so much less cohesive than it is. Yeah, listen, science, education, it's magical, okay? I don't know much about it. I try to stick to my lane as best as I can, you know? I don't know that much about it. All I'm saying is moral claims. Moral claims. They're not real. That's all I'm saying. Young Earth Clowns versus science debates. I can give them a look. Why are cars so loud? Counterpoints with the $5. Hi, bud. We're still alive. Hope you're doing well. Have a couple Trump bucks. Hey, Counterpoints. Hope you're doing well. I'm happy to hear that your family is still healthy and happy. I forget the name of your kid. That's not me trying to be dismissive, just I have a bad memory, but I hope they're doing really, really well because chat loves them, and when we heard their blubbing in the background of your mic, we all awed, you know? Laramis with the $2. Why do you think one should still vote for Biden if they don't live in a swing state and they don't live in a state where the winner doesn't take all? Because there is no harm to voting for Biden, and there is an infinitesimally small chance of harm in not voting at all. That's why. Because you don't know what could happen. Maybe there could be some landslide incident where your state goes in a different direction. If we believe Biden is preferable to Trump, we all have an ethical obligation to vote for Biden. Trying to introduce nuance to that. Yeah, people will say, like, nah, I'm good because they're, like, lazy and don't like contending with the ideas, or because they're bitch babies, or in the case of M. Portser specifically, because they have a tiny, tiny, itsy-bitsy baby little brain. But generally speaking, if you believe that one outcome is preferable to another, and there's no harm in participating in that process, you do ideally want to actually bring about that outcome if you can. Like, just simple arithmetic. Copy pasta with the $5, and you have indeed given me pasta. You've given me homemade pasta dough. Portser, I love you. I was just being mean. Pasta. It looks really good. Homemade pasta is really tough to make. Thank you for the recommendation, comrade. Samuel Ciccone with the $2. Is it true that the Killstream and AF are dying? America First and the Killstream were always going to die. They're off YouTube. DLive doesn't have a growing dynamic audience with a lot of discoverability. They have a set amount of viewers right now, and that number is just going to continually decrease with time because they no longer have the same level of access to other outlets, you know? America First is like really, really, really fucking big on DLive. I think it's their biggest thing. The Killstream, however, has been dying for a long time. Patrick Miller with the $2. Peter Joseph is the zeitgeist guy and a douchebag. Ah, fuck that guy then. And Sephiroth with the $3. Curious if you think Fuda porn helps normalize trans bodies. As a female to male, cunt boy stuff helped me. So curious about the male to female perspective. Well, I'm not trans, so this is just my personal opinion. But yes, I do think that much in the same way that the depiction of black people or trans people in regular media can help normalize them, the depiction of trans people or women with penises or boys with pussies or whatever in pornography can help normalize them, as long as it's not super fucking horrible and exploitative, you know? Like, for example, I think that having black people in films normalizes them in public discourse, obviously. It was a big deal back in the first Star Trek when Lieutenant Uhura kissed Captain Kirk, because that was the first interracial kiss in American television history. That's great, right? But if every time a black person's on television, they're like a maid or a slave, that's probably not so great. So likewise, if you're like jerking it to Fuda porn and it's just like big hot girls with big titties and big dicks and that's it, they're just like cool or whatever, that's great, you know? But if it's like Fuda porn and it's all about like degrading, like the disgusting, like you're actually a boy, these are fake boobs, like some shit like that, then obviously that would be bad, you know? It's really about the presentation. If you ever say as a trans woman, Fuda porn help me wait for the murder you'll receive, I don't think that's that controversial. I've seen lots of trans people say they felt that pornography helped them in certain ways like that. It's just what, I mean, again, I'm not trans. Like, that's just, it's my perspective on it, you know? Yeah, or trap narratives. Yeah, true. And JB Smoothbrain with the $2. Hey, Vosh, I am 12. Please debate my degenerate capitalist parents, then adopt me just to spite them. Sorry, comrade, and I don't think a 12-year-old should be using terminology like degenerate, but I'll keep it in mind, you know? Don't send me their info. And Sake Tanuki with the $5. Would you ever consider doing a hentai or porn critique stream on DLive if you're ever starved for content? DLive doesn't allow not safe for work like that. I would have to do it on Chatterbait. And yes, I want to do it on Chatterbait. I absolutely want to do that. I want to do it so badly. Are you kidding me? I'll find a chance to do it soon. I just need to make sure it wouldn't get me in legal trouble elsewhere. Do you think femboy is a slur? Nope. Femboy is not a slur. It's not. It's not a fucking slur. Femboy and tomboy are not slurs. They're not. No. The answer is no. Keep bringing that up. Stop donating! Bernie Sandinista with the $5. What is your favorite fight in Steel Ball Run? I still haven't finished it, so I can't say. I'm really sorry. It's been on hiatus for me for a really long time. And Aurora with the $2. Lamau, Peter Joseph is now an RBE. Marxist, look it up. Okay, I will look them up. Okay. Folks, I love you. I love you all so much. I ended the debate a fucking hour ago. I love... Sake Tanuki with the $5. Oh, and you need to do a Keep Talking Nobody Close streams with Reverend. Yes, we will do it soon. I promise. Tomorrow, video game stream or no stream. That's the dealio. Sorry, folks, you don't like it? Ha, can't sweat with the cool kids? Well, just kick off the road, Chumio. All right? You fat? Jack? Dog-faced pony soldier? Get out of here.